Good evening and welcome. Tonight we begin with the story of Pidgey, Pidgeotto and Pidgeot, exploring their appearances across anime, films, games, and the trading card game. The story will move gently and unhurried, giving you space to rest. Welcome to Sleepy Pokémon, where nostalgic adventures guide you into deep, peaceful rest. Chapter 1: Pokédex Introduction. The story of Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot begins in the quiet grasslands and forest edges of the Kanto region. When we first meet these bird Pokémon in the Pokédex, they are described with a simplicity that carries a gentle charm. Pidgey is a small brown bird with a cream chest and soft feathers. It is a normal and flying type, often found in flocks. Though unassuming, Pidgey is known for its cautious personality, preferring to avoid conflict when it can. Its sand attack can blind opponents, giving it the chance to escape into the sky. The Pokédex also describes Pidgey as docile and gentle, a bird that chooses flight over fight. Its round eyes watch carefully for danger, and when startled it flutters upward in quick bursts of wings. In grassy fields, groups of Pidgey often feed on seeds and small insects, taking to the air when a predator approaches. Their presence gives the early roots of Kanto a sense of life and movement, with feathers rustling softly in the wind. For many players and viewers, this small bird was one of the first creatures that truly made the Pokémon world feel alive. From Pidgey comes Pidgeotto, its first evolution. Pidgeotto is larger and more striking, with vivid red head feathers and sharp talons. Where Pidgey is timid, Pidgeotto becomes bold. The Pokédex explains that it is territorial, swooping down from the skies to drive away intruders. Its eyes focus with precision, able to spot prey far below. In the anime, we often see Pidgeotto in action, swooping, striking, and then returning calmly to Ash's side. The contrast between the shy Pidgey and the assertive Pidgeotto reflects a journey of growth, like a young trainer gaining confidence. Finally, we meet Pidgeot, the majestic final form. Standing tall and proud, with a flowing golden crest, Pidgeot is a magnificent bird that inspires awe. The Pokédex notes that it can fly at speeds approaching Mach 2, faster than the human eye can follow. Its wings spread wide and powerful, gliding through the clouds with elegance. In battle, it becomes a fierce protector, but outside of combat, Pidgeot is often shown roosting calmly, watching over its territory. Its balance of power and peace makes it a beloved Pokémon across generations. Together, this evolutionary line captures the feeling of beginnings, growth, and maturity. Pidgey represents innocence and caution, a new start at the edge of a grassy field. Pidgeotto stands for the courage to protect and explore, guiding its flock and asserting its strength. Pidgeot embodies mastery, speed, and grace, a symbol of the heights a small bird can reach when given time to grow. For players of the original Pokémon Red, Blue, and Yellow versions, Pidgey was often one of the very first Pokémon encountered, caught, and trained. For viewers of the anime, it was the first wild Pokémon Ash saw. And for collectors of the trading card game, Pidgeot's shining holographic card became a prize of wonder. As we begin this journey together, imagine a flock of Pidgey rising gently into the sky, wings fluttering softly. Picture a Pidgeotto circling high above, scanning the horizon. And see a Pidgeot soaring in the distance, golden crest catching the sunlight. Their story begins with these images, simple, quiet, and full of promise. Chapter 2: The First Wild Pokémon. The very first episode of the Pokémon anime, Pokémon I Choose You, opens with a sense of new beginnings. Ash Ketchum wakes late on the morning, He is to receive his starter Pokémon. With his partner Pikachu reluctantly at his side, Ash takes his first steps as a trainer into the wilds just beyond Pallet Town. It is here that he sees something remarkable. On the path, pecking gently at the ground for food, is a small brown bird, a Pidgey. This quiet encounter is history-making, for Pidgey is the very first wild Pokémon ever shown in the anime. Ash, full of excitement, reacts quickly. He tosses a Pokéball toward the Pidgey, hoping for an easy capture. The ball shakes, but the bird bursts free, flying upward into the trees. In this small moment, the anime teaches both Ash and the viewers that catching a Pokémon is not so simple. The forest falls quiet again, broken only by the flutter of Pidgey's wings as it perches just out of reach. The scene lingers, allowing us to feel both the wonder of discovery and the sting of failure. Determined, Ash tries again, this time leaning on Pikachu for help. He urges his new partner to battle Pidgey, but Pikachu only shakes its head. The yellow mouse turns its back, refusing to cooperate. Instead, Pikachu shocks Ash himself with a jolt of electricity. The comedy softens the sting of rejection, but the Pidgey remains untouched, free to continue searching for seeds. Its calm caution reflects what Pokédex entries often describe. Pidgey prefers to avoid confrontation and will not fight unless forced. Still, Ash is not discouraged. He crouches low in the grass and attempts another method, creeping toward Pidgey and preparing to throw his pajama belt like a lasso. With a flap of wings, the bird easily evades the clumsy attack. The image is almost tender, showing the sharp contrast between an inexperienced boy and a wild Pokémon that has survived countless challenges already. Pidgey darts away, leaving Ash flustered and empty-handed. This entire sequence unfolds with a gentle pace, setting the tone for the series to come. Pidgey, in its first appearance, is not captured, nor is it defeated. Instead, it remains free, a symbol of the living, breathing world Ash is just beginning to explore. The anime shows us that Pokémon are not simply there to be caught. They are creatures with their own instincts, choices, and dignity. When viewers remember the start of Ash's long journey, they often recall the image of that small brown bird in the grass. The soft coo of its cry, the flutter of its wings, and the way it slipped away untouched made an impression that has lasted for decades. Pidgey was not just the first wild Pokémon Ash encountered. It was the first for all of us watching, the beginning of a world that felt alive and full of possibility. Chapter 3. Failed Capture, Early Lesson. Ash's early encounter with Pidgey does not end with success. Instead, it unfolds as a gentle lesson in humility. After his Pokéball attempt fails, and Pikachu refuses to cooperate, Ash is left scrambling for another idea. The bird Pokémon remains nearby, pecking quietly at the ground. Its calm movements contrast with Ash's restless energy, showing just how unprepared the young trainer is for the realities of life in the wild. In a moment of desperation, Ash glances down at his clothes. With nothing else to use, he slips off his pajama belt and fashions it into a makeshift lasso. Crouching low, he edges closer through the tall grass. The forest is hushed except for the soft cooing of the bird. Ash steadies himself, breath held, then throws the belt toward Pidgey. The attempt is clumsy. With a swift beat of its wings, Pidgey lifts into the air, easily escaping the looping cloth. The belt falls harmlessly to the ground, leaving Ash reaching into empty air. The Pidgey hovers a moment, as if watching the boy below, then glides back into the trees. It does not attack, it does not linger. It simply flies away, cautious and free, leaving Ash once again without a capture. This scene is played with gentle humor in the anime, but it carries a quiet truth. Ash's excitement cannot replace skill, and his eagerness cannot make up for experience. The forest teaches him patience, and Pidgey itself becomes a kind of first teacher. By refusing to be caught, the bird reminds Ash that Pokémon are living creatures, not just prizes to be collected. They must be approached with respect, and battles must be fought with real effort. Pidgey's escape also shows the qualities that define its species. Small though it may be, Pidgey is clever. It avoids unnecessary conflict and relies on its wings to stay safe. The Pokédex later describes how it will often use Sand Attack to cover its retreat, but here it needs nothing more than a quick burst of flight. In the quiet forest setting, Pidgey's cautious nature feels natural, like the flutter of a leaf in the wind. Misty, who has begun to follow Ash by this point, watches his antics with disbelief. To her, this would-be trainer seems hopeless, fumbling with belts and shouting at a disobedient Pikachu. Yet even she cannot deny that Ash's determination is strong. He may fail, but he never stops trying. This stubborn spark is what will carry him far beyond this forest. As the scene ends, Pidgey disappears into the distance, wings vanishing among the branches. Ash stands alone on the path, belt in hand, humbled by his failure. The world of Pokémon feels larger than ever, filled with creatures that cannot simply be won over by force. For those who watch this moment, the lesson lingers. Pidgey's freedom reminds us that every beginning is marked not by success, but by the first lessons learned. Chapter 4. Pidgey's Cautious Nature. The first encounters with Pidgey show us more than just a small bird in the grass. They reveal a Pokémon that survives through caution, one that prefers peace over conflict. In both the anime and the games, Pidgey is described as docile. It does not seek out fights, and when danger approaches, it chooses the safety of flight. This instinct is what makes it one of the gentlest companions of the early routes. In the forest of Kanto, flocks of Pidgey often rise together at the slightest disturbance. The rustle of tall grass, the snap of a twig, or the cry of a predator is enough to send them fluttering into the canopy. The Pokédex explains that Pidgey has an extraordinary sense of direction. It can return to its nest from great distances, navigating by instinct. This means that even when it flees, it does not wander aimlessly. Its caution is paired with confidence, guiding it back to safety every time. The anime captures this nature with quiet moments. In the early episodes, Pidgey are often seen scattered across the background, pecking at the soil or perched on branches. They are never the aggressors. Instead, they move in groups, taking wing when startled. Their gentle coos and soft wing beats add to the sense that this world is alive, full of creatures going about their daily lives. The viewer is reminded that not every Pokémon is a fighter. Some are simply part of the landscape, enriching the setting with their presence. In contrast, the series often places Pidgey alongside its counterpart Spearow. Where Pidgey is cautious and mild, Spearow is aggressive and territorial. This difference is shown vividly in the first episode, when a flock of Spearow attacks Ash and Pikachu without hesitation. The Pidgey, by comparison, simply avoid Ash's fumbling attempts to capture them. Together, the two species create a balance, one shy and evasive, the other hot-tempered and bold. The games reinforce this idea through their mechanics. Early trainers who encounter Pidgey on Route 1 quickly learn that its main tools are Sand Attack and Gust. Sand Attack lowers accuracy, allowing Pidgey to blind its opponent and escape danger. It is not a flashy move, but it is effective for survival. Gust, light and steady, represents the simple strength of its wings. These moves reflect the very qualities we see in the anime. A creature that endures through cleverness, not force. For Ash, meeting Pidgey becomes a gentle reminder that his journey will not be easy. He cannot rush into the tall grass and expect victory. Pokémon like Pidgey show him that patience, respect, and understanding will be just as important as determination. And for viewers, this lesson is given with calm imagery. A small bird lifting off into the trees, avoiding harm without a trace of violence. As the flock disappears into the sky, the forest feels quieter, more thoughtful. Pidgey's cautious nature may seem simple, but it carries a wisdom that shapes both trainers and stories. It is a reminder that sometimes the bravest choice is not to fight, but to fly. Chapter 5. Ash catches Pidgeotto. Ash's journey with bird Pokémon takes a turn in the third episode of the anime, Ash Catches a Pokémon. After the failed attempts with Pidgey, his fortunes change when he comes across a Pidgeotto. Larger and more vibrant than its unevolved form, the bird circles above the grasslands before swooping down to feed. Its red crest, feathers, and sharp talons make it an impressive sight. For Ash, still new to being a trainer, the chance to capture such a strong Pokémon feels like an opportunity he cannot pass by. At first, Ash does what he has tried before. He throws a Pokéball, hoping for an easy catch. But the ball bursts open, and the wild Pidgeotto emerges unscathed. This time, though, Ash is not alone. Pikachu stands by, reluctantly ready to help after their rocky start together. Ash calls on Pikachu to battle, and a burst of electricity sparks across the field. Pikachu's Thundershock lands cleanly, weakening Pidgeotto just enough for Ash to try again. With determination in his eyes, Ash hurls another Pokéball. The ball strikes, opens, and pulls Pidgeotto inside. It wiggles once, twice, and finally clicks shut. Ash leaps into the air with joy. After his struggles with Pidgey, this capture feels like a true victory. It is only his second ever Pokémon capture, following Caterpie, but already his team is beginning to take shape. The bird Pokémon is no longer just something to watch in the trees. It is now a trusted partner. This moment is important for several reasons. For one, it shows Ash learning from his mistakes. Instead of trying tricks or shortcuts, he engages in a real battle, relying on Pikachu's strength to earn the capture. The scene also shows Pidgeotto's resilience. Even weakened, it puts up a fight, demonstrating the boldness that the Pokédex often highlights. Unlike the timid Pidgey, this evolution stands its ground before finally giving in. Once caught, Pidgeotto immediately takes a role in Ash's adventures. It is called upon for scouting, flying above the forests to keep watch. Its presence adds balance to Ash's early team, which now includes Caterpie and Pikachu. The capture also marks a quiet milestone in the anime's storytelling. In just 3 episodes, Ash has gone from fumbling with belts to commanding a battle that ends with success. Pidgeotto symbolizes that growth. The episode lingers for a moment on Ash's celebration. His joy is unrestrained, arms raised high, laughter echoing across the field. Behind him, Pikachu looks on, perhaps a little skeptical, but the bond between trainer and partner has grown stronger. And perched nearby, Pidgeotto watches with sharp eyes, as if already preparing for the battles ahead. For many fans, this scene is remembered as the point where Ash's team began to feel complete. It was not just Pikachu against the world anymore. The capture of Pidgeotto gave Ash a reliable companion, one that would stay with him across Kanto and into the Orange Islands. It is the beginning of a partnership built on trust, courage, and the thrill of flight. Chapter 6. Reliable in Early Battles. Once Pidgeotto joined Ash's team, it quickly became one of his most dependable partners in the early days of Kanto. Though Ash was still learning what it meant to be a trainer, Pidgeotto brought a balance of strength and steadiness that helped him in many situations. Where Caterpie was fragile and Pikachu often stubborn, Pidgeotto was calm and consistent. It answered Ash's calls with loyalty and gave him the confidence of having a true aerial companion. One of Pidgeotto's first important appearances came in Ash's second gym challenge, at the Cerulean City Gym. In the episode The Water Flowers of Cerulean City, Ash faced Misty, a skilled water-type trainer. Ash called on Pidgeotto against Misty's Starmie, hoping that flying-type speed could overcome water-type power. Pidgeotto darted and dodged above the pool, its wings glistening under the gym's lights. Though it was eventually struck down, the effort was not wasted. Ash gained experience as a trainer, and the match helped prepare him for what came next. Pikachu ultimately sealed the victory, but Pidgeotto's role showed Ash the value of teamwork. Later, Pidgeotto would appear again in Fuchsia City, when Ash battled the ninja gym leader Koga. In the Ninja Poké Showdown, Ash's Pidgeotto faced off against Koga's Venonat. With quick maneuvers and sharp strikes, Pidgeotto demonstrated both its agility and its reliability. The clash of wings against powder-based attacks gave the battle a unique rhythm, and though the match was tense, Pidgeotto helped Ash find his footing. Each gym battle was a new test, and each one proved that Pidgeotto was more than just another member of his team, it was an anchor. Outside of gym battles, Pidgeotto's usefulness was even more apparent. Whenever Team Rocket appeared, causing mischief with smoke bombs or balloons, Pidgeotto was often the first Pokémon Ash sent into action. Its gust attack cleared away smoke screens, restoring vision to the field. Its sharp talons and wings helped bring down Team Rocket's floating escapes. Again and again the bird stood firm, turning moments of chaos into moments of triumph. Even in the wilderness, Pidgeotto was invaluable. It scouted from the skies, giving Ash a view of what lay ahead. Its keen vision found lost Pokémon, located dangers, and often guided the group through forests and mountains. These small but vital tasks built trust between Ash and his Pokémon, as he came to rely on Pidgeotto not only in battles but in daily survival. For the viewers, this consistency made Pidgeotto feel familiar and dependable. It was not the flashiest of Ash's companions, nor the most celebrated, but it was always there when needed. Its soft cooing cry, the steady beat of its wings, and its gentle loyalty gave the early series a sense of rhythm. In those first uncertain months of Ash's journey, Pidgeotto was the partner that never wavered, a true symbol of reliability. Chapter 7. Counter to Team Rocket. No matter where Ash traveled in Kanto, Team Rocket seemed to follow. Jessie, James, and Meowth appeared time and again with their tricks, smoke bombs, and their ever-present hot air balloon. In these moments, one Pokémon was called upon more often than most: Pidgeotto. It became Ash's most trusted counter to Team Rocket, its wings a steady answer to their schemes. From its very first battles, Pidgeotto showed a talent for clearing the field. When Team Rocket filled the air with smokescreens or poisonous gases, Ash would send Pidgeotto forward. With a beat of its wings, gusts scattered the haze, restoring sight to the battlefield. This simple act, repeated across many episodes, became a comfort to viewers. Whenever the world seemed clouded, Pidgeotto was there to bring clarity. Team Rocket's balloon was another frequent target. Time after time, Jesse and James floated overhead, lowering nets or firing strange devices to steal Pikachu. Just as often, Pidgeotto rose into the air. With a quick strike or a sharp gust of wind, it popped the balloon, sending the villains tumbling back into the distance. The image of Pidgeotto flapping strongly against the painted Meowth face of Team Rocket's balloon became one of the anime's recurring rhythms. This role gave Pidgeotto a protective aura. It was not simply battling for victory. It was shielding its trainer, its friends, and even wild Pokémon from harm. In this way, Pidgeotto's actions foreshadowed the role it would later take as a Pidgeot, guarding an entire flock. Even before its evolution, the seeds of guardianship were present in its behavior. The pattern of these encounters created a sense of familiarity for viewers. Each time Team Rocket appeared, their motto rang out, and their plans unfolded. There was reassurance in knowing that Pidgeotto would often be there to help end it. Its cry, clear and sharp, cut through the noise. Its wings spread wide, scattering smoke and breaking the fragile balloon. Though Pikachu's Thunderbolt usually delivered the final blow, Pidgeotto's role was essential in turning the tide. For Ash, these repeated moments built trust. He learned that when trouble rose into the skies, Pidgeotto would answer. The young trainer who once fumbled with belts in the forest now had a partner he could rely on without hesitation. Each command he gave was met with swift action, and each battle ended with Pidgeotto circling back to his side. For fans, this loyalty gave Pidgeotto a special place in memory. It may not have been Ash's most celebrated Pokémon, but it was dependable, and its contributions were felt in nearly every confrontation with Team Rocket. With every flap of wings and every gust of wind, Pidgeotto secured its place as the steady hand in chaotic times. Chapter 8. Life Beyond Kanto. After Ash's journey through the Indigo League, his adventure carried him beyond Kanto and into the sunlit isles of the Orange Archipelago. This new setting was filled with tropical forests, shimmering beaches, and challenges unlike those in the mainland regions. Through it all, Pidgeotto remained by Ash's side, continuing its role as a trusted partner. The Orange Islands arc offered fresh opportunities to see Pidgeotto in action. Its sharp eyes and graceful flight proved especially useful across scattered islands, where travel often required scouting ahead. When Ash and his friends crossed bridges or sailed between shores, Pidgeotto often flew above them, keeping watch for trouble. In the skies, its silhouette became a constant reminder of security, circling calmly against the horizon. Battles in the islands also showed Pidgeotto's steady presence. It was called into action against wild Pokémon and during tournament matches. While Pikachu often took the spotlight, Pidgeotto provided essential support. Its speed and precision allowed it to strike quickly before opponents could react. Gust, Quick Attack, and Agility became its most familiar tools, a trio of moves that demonstrated consistency more than flash. For Ash, who was still learning how to balance his team, this reliability mattered greatly. The tropical setting of the Orange Islands gave Pidgeotto new backdrops. Instead of dense forests or rocky mountains, it flew above palm trees, coral beaches, and open seas. The sound of waves often mingled with the beat of its wings, creating an atmosphere both adventurous and calm. For viewers, these episodes deepened the sense that Pidgeotto was not just tied to one region. It was adaptable, thriving wherever Ash's journey carried him. In one battle after another, Pidgeotto reinforced its role as Ash's dependable partner. Against opponents who underestimated it, the bird's swiftness often turned the tide. Against Team Rocket, it once again took to the skies, breaking balloons and scattering smoke screens. These familiar patterns reminded fans of earlier adventures, even as the scenery changed. Looking back, the Orange Islands arc can be seen as a transition for Pidgeotto. It remained loyal and steady, but there was also a sense that greater things were coming. In the sunlight of the islands, with the ocean wind lifting its feathers, Pidgeotto seemed ready to take the next step in its evolution. The storylines built quietly toward a transformation that would become one of Ash's most memorable moments. Though the Orange Islands arc often highlighted other Pokémon, Pidgeotto's presence carried a quiet strength. It was never the loudest or the flashiest, but it was always there when needed. In this way, Pidgeotto mirrored the role of the Orange Islands themselves in Ash's journey, a bridge between the familiar past of Kanto and the greater challenges yet to come. Chapter 9. Aerial Strength Shown. Pidgeotto may not have been the strongest Pokémon on Ash's team, but its skills in the air set it apart. From the first days after its capture, it showed that speed and agility were its greatest weapons. Time and again, the anime highlighted the bird's ability to glide, dive, and strike with precision, giving Ash a reliable advantage when battles turned skyward. Quick Attack was one of Pidgeotto's signature moves. With a burst of speed, it would streak across the screen, wings flashing in a blur, striking before its opponent could react. The move emphasized not just raw strength, but timing, an ability to find the right opening. When combined with agility, Pidgeotto's movement became even more dazzling. In several episodes, Ash called upon it to outmaneuver enemies, darting in wide arcs before diving down for a strike. These moments showed that while Pidgeotto lacked the sheer power of some Pokémon, it made up for it with grace and control. Scouting was another of Pidgeotto's key contributions. When Ash needed to locate Team Rocket's latest hideout, or when the group became separated in forests and mountains, Pidgeotto was often the one sent aloft. Its keen eyesight allowed it to spot details far below. Several episodes showed Ash shading his eyes, watching as the bird circled above before calling out with its sharp cry. The reassurance of that sound carried comfort, a signal that help was close. Pidgeotto also proved invaluable in group battles where awareness of the field was critical. Against multiple opponents, its speed let it control the rhythm, darting in and out before they could respond. Its wings created gusts that scattered attacks, buying Ash time to think. Often the anime slowed the moment, showing the bird's wide sweep through the air before a quick dive. These graceful arcs made the battles feel almost like dances, where timing and motion mattered as much as force. The Orange Islands arc added new scenery for these displays. With the sun setting over calm waves, Pidgeotto could be seen gliding along the horizon, its silhouette framed in warm light. During battles near the sea, the bird skimmed the surface, feathers brushing above the water before lifting high again. These gentle touches of animation emphasized Pidgeotto's mastery of its element. The open air. Ash's appreciation for Pidgeotto grew with each of these moments. He often smiled as it returned to perch by his side, wings folding neatly, eyes bright and watchful. Though it did not always earn victory, it always gave effort, and it always responded to Ash's trust. In this way, Pidgeotto showed its aerial strength not only through its speed, but also through its loyalty. For viewers, these scenes built a quiet admiration. Pidgeotto was not flashy, yet it was graceful. It was not overwhelming, yet it was dependable. With every dive, every arc across the sky, it embodied the simple elegance of flight. Chapter 10. Evolution into Pidgeot. The story of Ash's Pidgeotto reaches its turning point in the episode Palette Party Panic. After so many battles, after so many moments of loyalty and effort, the time finally came for this steadfast bird to evolve. It happened not in the heat of a gym battle, but in the quiet forests near Ash's home, when danger threatened a flock of Pidgey and Pidgeotto. The episode begins with a celebratory air. Ash and his friends return to Pallet Town after their journey through the Orange Islands. The village is alive with energy, preparing for Professor Oak's party. But peace never lasts long where Team Rocket is concerned. Jessie, James, and Meowth arrive, intent on stealing the gathered Pokémon. They target the flock of small birds in the forest, capturing them in nets and stirring chaos. Ash calls on his Pidgeotto to help. True to its nature, the bird rushes into battle, wings cutting through the air. It tries to defend the flock, striking with gust and quick attack, but Team Rocket's persistence is overwhelming. The situation becomes dire as the captured birds struggle helplessly in the net. It is then, in this moment of desperation, that Pidgeotto's body glows with a brilliant light. The transformation is majestic. Pidgeotto stretches taller, its wings lengthen, and golden feathers extend from its crest in a flowing stream. The light fades, revealing Pidgeot for the very first time. Its cry is deeper now, fuller, resonating with strength. Ash stares in awe, his voice carrying both pride and joy as he calls out to his newly evolved partner. With newfound power, Pidgeot turns the tide of the battle. Its speed is incredible, far surpassing what it once could achieve. In a blur, it dives toward Team Rocket's balloon. With a single strike, the balloon bursts, sending the villains tumbling away. Then, with fierce precision, it breaks open the nets, freeing the trapped flock of Pidgey and Pidgeotto. The smaller birds flutter upward, filling the sky once again with life and freedom. The evolution is more than just a moment of strength. It is a culmination of the steady journey Pidgeotto had walked with Ash, a reward for its loyalty and courage. From a modest capture in the early days, to a guardian capable of protecting many, Pidgeotto had grown into Pidgeot in the most fitting way possible. For viewers, the scene carries a powerful weight. The gentle bird that once hesitated and fled, now soared as a protector. The glow of evolution was not just a change in form, but a symbol of the growth that comes from persistence, trust, and time. As the flock circles overhead, safe once more, Ash smiles. Pidgeot stands tall by his side, wings spread wide. In that moment, their bond feels unshakable, forged in loyalty and strengthened in flight. It is one of the most memorable evolutions of the early series, a scene where courage took wing and soared. Chapter 11. A Bittersweet Release. The joy of Pidgeotto's evolution into Pidgeot in Palette Party Panic was followed almost immediately by one of Ash's earliest and most emotional goodbyes. No sooner had Pidgeot shown its new strength than it was asked to take on a responsibility greater than battling at Ash's side. This moment gave fans a memory of both triumph and sadness, woven together in a way that lingers even today. After freeing the flock of Pidgey and Pidgeotto from Team Rocket's net, Pidgeot stood proudly, wings outstretched. The smaller birds gathered around it, looking up to their new protector. The forest was still full of danger, and wild predators like Fearow continued to threaten the flock. Ash recognized that his newly evolved Pidgeot was the one who could keep them safe. It was strong, fast, and brave, the perfect guardian for the forest. The decision was not easy. Ash had grown attached to his loyal bird, who had been with him since the very earliest days of his journey. Pidgeotto had fought for him in gyms, carried him through the Orange Islands, and stood as his most consistent partner against Team Rocket. Now, just as it had reached its greatest form, Ash was faced with letting it go. The anime slows in this moment, giving time for Ash's emotions to surface. He looks at Pidgeot with pride but also with sadness. He tells it to stay behind, to protect the Pidgey and Pidgeotto from harm. Most importantly, he makes a promise, one that fans would never forget. Ash vows to come back for Pidgeot someday, to return to the forest and reunite. Pidgeot accepts this role without hesitation. Its head lowers in acknowledgement, and its wings spread wide to shelter the smaller birds. The flock gathers close, reassured by the strength of their new leader. Ash, Misty, and Brock look on, their expressions reflecting the bittersweet nature of the moment. They understand that this is not a defeat but a sacrifice, one that shows Ash's growth as a trainer. As the sun filters through the trees, Ash says his farewell. Pidgeot watches him leave, standing tall among its flock. The group continues down the path, the forest behind them now under Pidgeot's protection. The cry of the majestic bird echoes through the air, both a goodbye and a promise kept in sound. For viewers, the scene carried weight beyond its simple plot. It was the first time Ash let go of a Pokémon, not because he had to, but because it was the right thing to do. The tenderness of that choice made so early in his journey left an impression on fans who felt the sting of parting alongside him. Though Ash's story moved forward, the image of Pidgeot watching over its forest remained in memory. Strong, noble, and loyal, it had become not only Ash's partner but also a protector in its own right. The release was bittersweet, a farewell filled with pride, sorrow, and hope. Chapter 12. Years of Absence. When Ash parted with Pidgeot in Palette Party Panic, he promised he would return for it. The words were spoken with certainty, as if the reunion would come soon. Yet as the seasons passed and the anime moved into new regions, the promise remained unfulfilled. What began as a hopeful vow quietly stretched into one of the longest absences in Ash's story. Through Johto, Ash traveled with new partners, catching Pokémon that reflected his growth as a trainer. Yet Pidgeot never returned. The forests of Kanto, once alive with the flutter of Pidgey wings, remained in the background of memory. Fans watched as Ash built bonds with Cyndaquil, Totodile, and Noctowl, always with the quiet thought of the loyal bird left behind. Hoenn came next, and with it new companions like Swellow. Again the skies were filled with bird Pokémon, but not the one Ash had raised from Pidgeotto. Pidgeot's absence grew more noticeable. Each time Ash set off for a new region, there was hope that perhaps this would be the time he kept his promise. But still, the majestic bird remained unseen. The Sinnoh region brought fresh rivalries and powerful evolutions. Yet no matter how high Ash climbed, Pidgeot was not at his side. Even as Unova and Kalos came and went, Pidgeot's name was rarely spoken. Other early Pokémon such as Charizard returned for battles and tournaments, their reunions greeted with joy. Pidgeot, however, stayed in the forest, guarding its flock. The silence became part of its legend. For viewers, this absence was bittersweet. Many remembered the early promise and carried it with them as the years passed. Discussion often arose among fans, wondering if Ash had forgotten. The bond was never broken in spirit, but it felt as though the story had been left incomplete. The anime itself occasionally reminded viewers of Ash's older partners, but Pidgeot remained one of the most enduring mysteries. Its release was not final, as Ash had declared his intent to return, and yet decades in real time passed without it reappearing. For children who grew up with those first episodes, the waiting stretched into adulthood. Still, the memory of Pidgeot's evolution and release remained powerful. It symbolized sacrifice, the willingness to let go for the sake of others. That noble act, carried out by both trainer and Pokémon, made the absence easier to bear, even as it grew longer. When looking back, this long silence gave the eventual reunion in Pokémon Journeys extraordinary weight. Because Pidgeot was not forgotten by the audience, its return felt like a long-kept promise finally fulfilled. But for many years, all that existed was the echo of its cry, fading into the forests of Kanto, where it stood as guardian, unseen but not forgotten. Chapter 13: Reunion in Journeys. For many years, Pidgeot remained only in memory, a silent promise waiting to be fulfilled. That long wait finally ended in Pokémon Journeys, the series episode 136 titled Partners in Time. After decades in real-world time, Ash returned to the forests of Kanto, and at last came face to face with his old friend. The reunion was quiet, heartfelt, and deeply rewarding for those who had carried the memory of their parting for so long. The episode takes place near the end of Ash's journey, after his great triumph in the World Coronation series. With his victory complete, he sets out once again to revisit familiar places and reflect on his past. It is during this winding path through Kanto that Ash encounters the same forest where he once released Pidgeot. The setting is familiar, with tall trees, dappled light, and the sound of flocks calling overhead. As Ash steps into the clearing, he looks upward and sees the familiar shape of Pidgeot soaring high above. Its golden crest catches the sunlight, a vision both majestic and nostalgic. The flock of Pidgey and Pidgeotto still flies below, the same group Pidgeot was left to protect so many years ago. True to its word, the bird never abandoned them, still acting as their guardian. Ash's face lights up with joy as he calls out to it. His voice carries the same affection it did in his youth, unshaken by time. Pidgeot descends gracefully, wings beating with strength, and lands before him. The two lock eyes, trainer and Pokémon, and in that moment, the decades of absence vanish. Their bond, dormant but never broken, shines clearly once more. The anime lingers on the emotion of the scene. Ash runs forward, smiling wide, while Pidgeot bows its head in recognition. Pikachu is there as well, chirping with excitement at seeing their old teammate again. For fans, the sight is deeply moving. The promise from Palette Party Panic, spoken so long ago, is finally honored. This reunion also speaks to the heart of Ash's character. Though he traveled to distant lands and met countless Pokémon, he never truly forgot the ones who stood with him at the start. Pidgeot's return is a reminder that even unfinished stories can find their endings, no matter how much time passes. As the episode continues, Ash and Pidgeot share their strength once more, flying together through the skies of Kanto. The flock remains safe under Pidgeot's watch, and Ash's presence seems to bring comfort both to them and to his old friend. It is not only a reunion, but also a celebration of loyalty, proof that the bond between trainer and Pokémon endures. For the audience, this moment carried the weight of nostalgia and closure. After nearly 3 decades, the majestic bird returned, standing proud by Ash's side once again. The reunion was gentle, heartfelt, and complete. Pidgeot's cry rang out through the forest, not as a farewell this time, but as a greeting renewed. Chapter 14. Background in Kanto. While Ash's Pidgeotto had its moments in battle, much of the charm of the Pidgey line came from its quieter appearances. From the very first episodes of the Kanto saga, Pidgey could be seen fluttering across the skies and nesting in the branches of Viridian Forest. These background details gave the anime its sense of atmosphere. They made the world feel alive, not just through the battles of trainers, but through the gentle rhythms of wild Pokémon carrying on with their lives. In the episode Challenge of the Samurai, Ash and his friends ventured into the thick woods of Viridian Forest. The trees rose high above them, sunlight filtering through the leaves. While the focus was on Caterpie and its battles, viewers could spot Pidgey perched quietly on branches, watching the events below. The birds never intruded or attacked. They simply added life to the forest, filling it with soft sounds and fleeting movements. These scenes may have been subtle, but they mattered. They reminded us that the world of Pokémon was not built only around battles. It was also a natural world, home to creatures that ate, nested, and migrated much like birds in our own world. Pidgey flocks rising suddenly into the air became a familiar sight. Their wings created ripples of sound that filled the silence between battles, a gentle backdrop to the journey. The anime often used Pidgey to contrast with the more aggressive Spearow. Where Spearow attacked in flocks, driving Ash and Pikachu to the edge of exhaustion, Pidgey preferred to stay out of conflict. Their quiet presence showed that not every Pokémon responded with hostility. Some were gentle, cautious, and content to live peacefully in the forests and fields. This balance of species made the world feel more natural and dynamic. At times, Pidgeotto and Pidgeot could also be seen in the skies. Their larger wingspans cast longer shadows, their calls sharper and louder. These glimpses helped to foreshadow Ash's eventual bond with Pidgeotto. Even before his capture, the presence of the bird family was threaded into the fabric of the Kanto region. For viewers, these background appearances carried a sense of comfort. They made the Pokémon world familiar and inviting. Watching Pidgey flutter across the screen felt like seeing sparrows outside a window, ordinary and soothing, yet still magical in their place in the story. Even without dialogue or dramatic battles, these small moments gave texture to Ash's journey. When people remember the early days of the anime, they often recall not only the main battles, but also these gentle scenes of a forest alive with movement. Pidgey's quiet coos, the sudden flutter of wings, the image of a flock scattering into the treetops, all of these became part of the shared memory of Kanto. In their own way, Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot shaped the anime not just as fighters but as world builders. They filled the skies with life, making the Pokémon world feel as real as the one outside our doors. Chapter 15. Johto and Hoenn Cameos. When Ash's adventures carried him beyond Kanto, the Pidgey line did not disappear. Instead, they quietly remained part of the world, appearing in the skies and forests of new regions. Their cameos in Johto and Hoenn reminded viewers that these birds were not limited to one place. They were part of the broader Pokémon ecosystem, a familiar presence no matter how far Ash traveled. In the Johto Journeys, Pidgey could be seen in wide shots of forests and fields. When Ash and his friends camped under the stars or walked along country roads, the sound of wings overhead often belonged to small flocks of Pidgey. Their gentle coos filled the background, blending with the chirps of other Pokémon. These appearances were not dramatic, but they carried warmth. They showed that even in new lands, the same creatures that filled the skies of Kanto continued to thrive. Occasionally, trainers in Johto were also shown with Pidgey or Pidgeotto. These brief moments added a layer of realism, suggesting that young trainers in every region often began their journeys with simple, approachable Pokémon. Just as Ash had once captured a Pidgeotto early on, so too did other children of Johto. The line had become a symbol of starting out, of taking the first step toward adventure. Pidgeot also appeared in cameos during Johto, soaring high above as a reminder of what Pidgey could become. The sharp cry of the fully evolved bird echoed across mountain passes and lakesides, adding a note of majesty to the landscape. Even without a dedicated storyline, its presence enriched the world with a sense of continuity. The Hoenn region too found space for the Pidgey line in passing shots. Though Hoenn introduced its own early root bird in Talo, Pidgey flocks were still seen at times, mingling with local species. These subtle glimpses reinforce the idea that Pokémon migrate, spreading across regions just as birds do in our own world. The skies of Hoenn were never empty, and the familiar forms of Pidgey or Pidgeot added comfort for longtime fans. For viewers, these cameos carried a quiet nostalgia. The sight of a Pidgey on a branch, or a Pidgeot gliding above, reminded them of Ash's early days in Kanto. It was as though the anime itself whispered a soft reminder. Even as the story grew larger, the roots of the journey were never far away. These appearances also highlighted an important truth of the Pokémon world. Not every creature is meant to stand at the center of a battle or arc. Many live in the background, shaping the atmosphere of forests, fields, and skies. The Pidgey line filled this role beautifully, offering familiarity in new places. By appearing in Johto and Hoenn, Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot proved themselves not just as characters in one trainer's story, but as part of the living world. Their wings carried across regions, bridging old adventures with new. Chapter 16, The First Movie Appearance. In 1998, the world was introduced to Pokémon the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back. For many fans, it was the first time they experienced Pokémon on the big screen, and Ash's Pidgeotto was among the familiar companions who made the journey to New Island. Though it did not take center stage, its presence connected the early episodes of the anime to this landmark film. The story begins when trainers receive mysterious invitations to challenge a powerful new Pokémon. Ash, Misty, and Brock accept the call, setting out across a stormy sea to reach the hidden island. Team Rocket, of course, follows close behind. The voyage is perilous. Waves crash, winds howl, and the small boat struggles to stay afloat. During this sequence, Ash's Pokémon lend their strength, each helping to move the vessel forward. Among them is Pidgeotto, flapping steadily against the storm, wings beating hard against the driving rain. It is a quiet but meaningful image. Pidgeotto is not battling or stealing the spotlight. Instead, it is there as it has always been, a loyal partner, doing its part to carry Ash through difficulty. The bird's determination mirrors the tone of the journey, where danger looms, but friendship gives strength. For fans in the theater, seeing Pidgeotto alongside Pikachu, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur created a sense of comfort. These were the companions they had followed since the first days of the anime. On New Island itself, where Mewtwo's challenge unfolds, Pidgeotto is present in Ash's lineup. The cloned Pokémon Mewtwo created overshadowed many of the trainer's partners, yet Pidgeotto stood firm among them, ready to defend its trainer if called upon. While it did not play a major role in the climactic battles, its steady presence contributed to the feeling that Ash had brought his full team into this trial. The film lingers less on individual Pokémon and more on the overarching themes of friendship, sacrifice, and understanding. Still, Pidgeotto's inclusion mattered. It reminded viewers that every member of Ash's team, no matter how much screen time, was part of his journey. The sight of its feathers ruffled by the storm, the sound of its cry echoing among stronger Pokémon, reinforced the idea that loyalty comes in many forms. When audiences left the theater, they remembered the powerful clash between Mewtwo and Mew, the tears of Pikachu, and the timeless message of compassion. Yet nestled among those memories was the reassurance of familiar faces. Pidgeotto among them, standing quietly but faithfully at Ash's side. For a bird Pokémon first caught in Episode 3, its inclusion in the very first Pokémon movie was a recognition of its role. Though not flashy, it was constant. Its flight through the storm symbolized what it had always represented in the series: persistence, support, and the strength of being present when needed. Chapter 17. Later Movie Cameos. While Ash's Pidgeotto appeared most clearly in Pokémon the first movie, the Pidgey family continued to make smaller but memorable cameos in later films. These were not moments of great battles or dramatic storylines, but they added atmosphere, reminding audiences that the world of Pokémon was wide and alive. The presence of Pidgey and Pidgeot in the skies became a familiar rhythm across the cinematic stories. One of the most notable examples came in Pokémon the Movie 2000, The Power of One. The film opens with sweeping scenes of the ocean and islands as the story of Lugia and the legendary birds is introduced. Among the many Pokémon shown soaring across the sky are flocks of Pidgey and the elegant silhouette of Pidgeot. Their forms cross the horizon, wings gliding with ease, blending seamlessly with the larger spectacle of the movie's introduction. For fans watching in theaters, these details gave the story grounding. The world of the legendary birds felt richer because it included the everyday presence of familiar species. Other films continued this tradition. In opening montages and transitional sequences, Pidgey could often be seen fluttering from tree branches or taking off in small groups, while Pidgeot appeared circling above landscapes. These shots, brief though they were, added depth to the world on screen. Not every Pokémon needed to be a hero. Some existed simply to fill the skies, just as birds do in our own world. The gentle cry of Pidgey, or the deeper call of Pidgeot, served as subtle sound cues in these films. In moments when music softened, the flutter of wings or the faint call of a bird reminded audiences that life continued in the background. The creators of the anime understood that these details mattered. They made the world feel inhabited, not just by legendary creatures and main characters, but also by the Pokémon that trainers and viewers first came to know. For many fans, spotting Pidgey or Pidgeot in the movies became a small joy, a nod to the earliest days of the franchise. Seeing them among forests, skies, or open plains brought back memories of Ash's early journeys in Kanto. These cameos acted as a thread of continuity, tying the spectacle of the films to the simplicity of the beginning. Though they never played leading roles in the Pokémon movies, the Pidgey family's appearances were a reminder of their place in the larger tapestry. They symbolized the ordinary made extraordinary, a common bird elevated by its constant presence in the Pokémon world. When we look back on the movies, we often remember the clashes of legends and the bonds of trainers and their partners. But if we pause and recall the small details, we can see the flocks of Pidgey taking flight in the background and the graceful arc of Pidgeot high above. Quiet, steady, and always present, they gave the skies a life of their own. Chapter 18. Debut in Red, Blue, Yellow. Long before Pidgeotto evolved into Pidgeot in the anime, Players around the world first met this bird Pokémon in the earliest video games. In 1996, Pokémon Red and Green were released in Japan, followed soon after by Pokémon Red and Blue internationally, and Pokémon Yellow later on. From the very first steps outside Pallet Town, trainers encountered Pidgey, fluttering through the tall grass of Route 1. It quickly became one of the most familiar sights in the entire franchise. Pidgey was one of the first wild Pokémon that could be caught, often alongside Rattata. Its simple design and gentle behavior made it approachable, even for new players just learning the mechanics of the game. With its small frame and soft coloring, it looked like a bird you might see outside your own window, grounding the fantasy world with a touch of realism. For many, their very first successful capture was a Pidgey. The sight of the Pokéball shaking, then clicking shut, left a lasting impression. In battle, Pidgey reflected its Pokédex descriptions as a docile but resourceful Pokémon. Its earliest moves were Gust and Sand Attack. Gust delivered steady flying-type damage, while Sand Attack lowered the opponent's accuracy, often causing their moves to miss. These simple tools made Pidgey useful in the early stages of the game, when trainers needed reliable partners to help carry them toward their first gym battles. The progression of its evolutionary line gave players a sense of growth. At level 18, Pidgey evolved into Pidgeotto, gaining stronger stats and a more assertive design. Pidgeotto looked fiercer, with sharper feathers and bolder colors, giving players a feeling of pride in how far their companion had come. Then, at level 36, Pidgeotto evolved into Pidgeot, a majestic Pokémon with flowing crest feathers and powerful wings. For many players, raising a small Pidgey into a soaring Pidgeot was their first taste of the satisfaction that comes with nurturing a Pokémon through its entire line. In Pokémon Yellow, where the player traveled alongside Pikachu much like Ash in the anime, Pidgey remained a frequent sight in the wild. Many players caught one early, making their in-game teams mirror Ash's adventures. Though not the strongest bird available later in the game, Pidgey's familiarity gave it a special charm. It felt like a partner that belonged on the team, a symbol of those first uncertain steps outside the safety of Pallet Town. The presence of Pidgey in the original games established a pattern that would repeat in every generation. Each new region introduced a small bird found on the first routes, meant to be a reliable flying-type companion for new trainers. Yet it was Pidgey that set the standard. Its wings became a symbol of beginnings, guiding countless trainers on their first journeys across Kanto. For those who started with red, blue, or yellow, the memory of catching a Pidgey remains vivid. It was a gentle companion, a modest ally, and often the very first friend they made in the Pokémon world. Chapter 19: Johto and Beyond. When the second generation of games arrived with Pokémon Gold and Silver in 1999 in Japan and 2000 in the rest of the world, players discovered a new land to explore, the Johto region. Yet even in this fresh setting, the familiar flutter of wings reminded trainers of their roots. Pidgey once again appeared on early routes, waiting in the tall grass just as it had in Kanto. The continuity was comforting. It showed that some Pokémon were not bound to a single region, but instead were woven into the larger world. In Johto, Pidgey was most commonly found near the starting town of New Bark and along early paths such as Route 29. New trainers often encountered it within minutes of beginning their journey, sometimes even before meeting the new regional bird, Hoot Hoot. This overlap created an interesting balance. Players could choose between the familiar Pidgey or experiment with Johto's nocturnal owl. Many trainers caught both, raising them side by side, letting day and night feel alive with different calls. Pidgeotto and Pidgeot also returned, accessible through evolution as before. Their sprites in gold and silver were redesigned, reflecting the updated style of the Game Boy Color. The new graphics gave them a sharper look, and the addition of colors brought Pidgeot's golden crest to life. Seeing that majestic form in color for the first time was a quiet thrill, as if the bird had grown even more vibrant in the new age of Pokémon. As the years continued, the Pidgey line remained a constant. They appeared in Pokémon Crystal, then carried into FireRed and LeafGreen, which remade the original Kanto adventures with updated visuals. Later, they could be found in the Sinnoh-based Diamond and Pearl through regional Pokédex expansions. No matter where the games went, whether to the snowy peaks of Sinnoh or the tropical roots of Alola, Pidgey found a way to appear in some form, reminding trainers of beginnings long past. Their continued presence carried symbolic weight. For returning players, encountering a Pidgey in a new game was like meeting an old friend. It evoked the memory of early captures on Route 1, of learning how to battle, and of watching evolutions unfold for the first time. Even as mechanics grew more complex and rosters expanded, Pidgey's presence grounded the experience. By reappearing across generations, the Pidgey line became more than just part of the Kanto region. It became part of the Pokémon world as a whole. Like sparrows or pigeons in our own lives, they were everywhere, filling the skies and fields, reminding us of the ordinary beauty that surrounds the extraordinary. For many players, catching Pidgey in Johto or Beyond carried the same quiet joy as it did in Kanto. Its wings were not flashy, but steady. Its presence was not rare, but familiar. In every region where it appeared, the Pidgey line continued to symbolize continuity, comfort, and the timeless rhythm of flight. Chapter 20: Early Move Pools. Part of what made the Pidgey line so memorable in the early Pokémon games was not only their frequent encounters but also the simple set of moves they carried. These moves reflected their cautious yet capable nature, and they became familiar tools for countless trainers across Red, Blue, Yellow, and the games that followed. Each attack, modest though it seemed, carried a role in shaping how players learned to battle. At the very beginning, Pidgey relied on Gust. In the first generation, this move was typed as normal rather than flying, a small detail that many players would not realize until later. Even so, it served as the bird's first offensive technique, a steady burst of wind created by flapping wings. Gust may not have been flashy, but it taught new trainers the rhythm of battle. Chip away at an opponent, endure their strikes, and patiently wait for victory. Alongside Gust was Sand Attack, one of Pidgey's most characteristic moves. With a quick beat of its wings, it could stir up dust or dirt, blinding an opponent and lowering their accuracy. This often led to misses, frustrating wild Pokémon and rival trainers alike. For many players, Sand Attack was their introduction to status-altering moves. It showed that winning a battle was not always about raw power. Sometimes strategy and clever disruption could tip the scales. As Pidgey grew stronger, evolving into Pidgeotto at level 18, its move pool expanded. Quick Attack was one of the earliest new additions. This priority move allowed Pidgeotto to strike first, even against faster opponents. For new trainers, it was often a lifesaver, finishing off weakened foes before they could deliver a final blow. Watching Pidgeotto dart forward in a blur, striking before the opponent moved, created a satisfying sense of speed and control. By the time Pidgeotto became Pidgeot at level 36, the line gained access to stronger flying-type moves such as Wing Attack. This move carried the simple image of a bird striking with its wings, yet it marked a clear upgrade in strength from Gust. It finally gave players the feeling that their Pidgeot could stand tall in battle, not just as support but as a reliable attacker. Agility was another move often associated with the Pidgey line. Though it did not deal damage, it sharply boosted speed, allowing Pidgeotto or Pidgeot to outpace opponents with ease. In the hands of patient players, agility made the bird line feel untouchable, darting ahead of every strike. For young trainers, it was an early lesson in the value of stat-boosting moves. Though the move pool of the Pidgey line was never overwhelming, it was steady and effective. Gust, Sand Attack, Quick Attack, Wing Attack, and Agility — these were the feathers that built its legacy. They taught new trainers how to balance offense, defense, and clever tactics. And for many players, the sound of a small bird's wings in battle became one of their earliest and fondest memories of learning how to fight in the Pokémon world. Chapter 21: Stadium Animations. When Pokémon made the leap from handheld screens to the television through the Nintendo 64, the Pidgey line was there to take flight in 3 dimensions. Pokémon Stadium, released in Japan in 1998 and in the rest of the world in 2000, gave players the chance to see their favorite partners animated in 3D for the very first time. For many fans, watching Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot move across the screen was a gentle thrill, a reminder that these once tiny sprites were living, breathing creatures. Pidgey appeared small and fluttering, hopping lightly from side to side. Its wings beat with soft strokes, and when it used Gust, the game displayed whirling streams of air, showing in bright colors what the text-based battles on the Game Boy had only described. Sand Attack was another move that looked especially lively. A small burst of dust clouded the opponent's space, the kind of detail that made Pidgey's personality shine. It was timid yet clever, true to the Pokédex descriptions players already knew. Pidgeotto, meanwhile, had a sharper stance. Its body leaned forward, talons gripping the ground, crest feathers swaying with movement. When it launched into Quick Attack, it darted across the screen with a swift streak, more dramatic than the subtle text of earlier games. Gust from Pidgeotto carried more weight as well, with larger swirls of air showing the growth of its power. These animations captured its role as a bold mid-stage evolution, no longer cautious but assertive in the skies. Pidgeot stood out most of all. Majestic and tall, its crest of golden feathers flowed with each movement. Its animations carried elegance, whether it was flapping wings to summon a strong wind or diving swiftly at an opponent. Watching Pidgeot use agility was especially striking. The animation showed it moving faster and faster, its form blurring slightly as speed increased. It gave a sense of grandeur, of a bird that could truly rule the skies. The transition to Pokémon Stadium 2, which expanded to include Johto Pokémon, brought even more polish. The animations became smoother, and the cries of the birds felt more natural. The developers seemed to recognize that even common Pokémon deserved care and attention in their presentation. For many children playing these games, Pidgey's flutter or Pidgeot's proud stance became their first vivid memory of these creatures in motion outside the anime. Though stadium battles were often challenging and competitive, the gentle presence of Pidgey in its evolutions brought familiarity to the arena. They were not legendary or rare, but they reminded players of beginnings, of catching a Pidgey on Route 1 and raising it with patience. In full 3D, the bird line felt alive in a new way, bridging the gap between imagination and reality. For fans, these animations remain nostalgic. Even today, watching a Pidgeot spread its wings in Pokémon Stadium recalls the simple joy of seeing a partner come to life. The birdline's journey had taken flight once more, this time through the glow of a console screen. Chapter 22: Snap and New Snap. Not every encounter with Pokémon needs to be a battle. In Pokémon Snap, released for the Nintendo 64 in 1999, Players were given a camera instead of Pokeballs, and the Pidgey line became one of the first subjects in this new way of experiencing the world. It was a peaceful reminder that Pokémon could be appreciated not only as fighters, but also as living creatures with their own beauty. The very first stage of the game, the beach course, introduced players to Pidgey. As the 01 vehicle rolled slowly along the sand, a pair of Pidgey could be seen fluttering overhead, wings beating gently as they returned to their nest. Later in the level they appeared again, swooping toward the mischievous Meowth who prowled the dunes. Players who timed their photos carefully could capture an image of the birds mid-flight, wings stretched wide against the bright sky. For many, these first snapshots became treasured memories. The simplicity of photographing Pidgey captured their essence. They were not meant to dominate the scene, but to add motion and life. A good photo rewarded players with Professor Oak's calm voice, praising timing or framing. It encouraged patience and appreciation, values that mirrored Pidgey's own cautious nature. Years later, in 2021, new Pokémon Snap arrived on the Nintendo Switch, expanding the concept with richer environments and more dynamic Pokémon behavior. Here, Pidgeot took center stage in several memorable moments. On one course, players could watch as a Pidgeot soared above the landscape, crest feathers catching the light. If the player used fruit to draw its attention, the majestic bird would descend gracefully, wings stirring the air as it landed nearby. One of the most striking scenes involved a Pidgeot swooping down to snatch a Magikarp from a riverbank. The sequence happened quickly, yet players who captured it in a photograph were rewarded with an image full of motion and drama. This natural interaction highlighted Pidgeot, not just as a partner in battle, but as a living predator within its ecosystem. It was elegant, powerful, and undeniably real. Both games emphasized the quiet beauty of the bird line. Without the tension of battle, players could focus on small details: the texture of feathers, the curve of a wing, the soft cry of a bird calling across the level. These photographic encounters showed another side of Pidgey and Pidgeot, one that felt closer to observing wildlife in our own world. For fans, these moments held a unique charm. The photographs captured in Snap and New Snap were keepsakes, frozen glimpses of creatures who had long been companions in games and anime. Whether it was a humble Pidgey fluttering on the beach or a mighty Pidgeot soaring through the clouds, the camera lens revealed their quiet dignity. Through these games, players were reminded that sometimes it is enough simply to watch. Pidgey and Pidgeot, caught in the stillness of a photograph, became symbols of the calm beauty that fills the Pokémon world. Chapter 23: Mystery Dungeon Stories. When Pokémon stepped into the world of Mystery Dungeon, the Pidgey line found new ways to take part in adventures. These spin-off games, beginning with Pokémon Mystery Dungeon, Red Rescue Team, and Blue Rescue Team in 2005, placed players directly in the role of Pokémon themselves. Instead of being partners for human trainers, Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot became companions, allies, and sometimes even quest givers. In these games, wild Pokémon spoke with voices of their own. They had personalities, worries, and goals, and the Pidgey line was no exception. Early on, Pidgey sometimes appeared as Pokémon in need of help, trapped in dungeons or calling for rescue. For players guiding their own rescue teams, answering these calls created a sense of connection. Saving a small bird from danger felt meaningful, reinforcing the idea that every Pokémon, no matter how common, deserved care and compassion. Pidgeotto and Pidgeot also appeared in supporting roles. In some stories, they were clients, asking the rescue team to complete missions such as retrieving lost items or escorting friends through dangerous dungeons. At other times, they were members of wild groups within the dungeons themselves, flying quickly down corridors and striking with familiar moves like Quick Attack and Gust. Seeing them in these roles highlighted their adaptability, sometimes gentle and vulnerable, sometimes bold and challenging. In later mystery dungeon titles such as Explorers of Time and Explorers of Darkness, Pidgeot in particular was shown with a sense of majesty. Its powerful cry and sweeping wings gave the impression of a Pokémon who understood the weight of leadership, echoing the guardian role it once held in the anime. Whether as an ally or an opponent, its presence brought drama and dignity to the dungeon floors. The beauty of the Mystery Dungeon series was in how it gave Pokémon inner voices. Through dialogue boxes and expressions, Pidgey became more than just a cautious bird fleeing from danger. It could express gratitude, worry, or determination. Pidgeotto could speak of loyalty or courage. Pidgeot could take on the mantle of protector, not just through action but through words. For fans who had grown up with the anime, hearing these Pokémon share their thoughts was refreshing and heartfelt. These appearances may not have been as prominent as legendary figures or central characters, but they carried quiet significance. They showed that the Pidgey line was part of the fabric of every Pokémon world. In Kanto, in Johto, in spin-off universes where humans vanished, and Pokémon carried the story themselves. For players exploring endless dungeons, the sight of a familiar bird perched in a corridor or waiting at the request board was a gentle reminder of beginnings. Just as Pidgey was often the first Pokémon caught in the main series, here it became one of the first friends met in a world where Pokémon stood on their own. Chapter 24: Pidgey in Pokémon Go. When Pokémon Go launched in the summer of 2016, the world was suddenly filled with Pokémon. Phones buzzed as players wandered streets, parks, and neighborhoods, watching the digital creatures appear in augmented reality. Among the very first Pokémon that trainers encountered was Pidgey. Small, common, and ever-present, it became one of the most recognizable figures of the game's earliest days. Pidgey appeared almost everywhere. On sidewalks near schools, by fountains and city benches, its brown form fluttered across phone screens. For many players, Pidgey was their first catch in Pokémon Go, mirroring its role in the original Red and Blue games where it was often the first wild Pokémon encountered. The familiarity was comforting. It gave players a gentle bridge between nostalgic memories of Kanto and this new experience of catching Pokémon in the real world. But Pidgey's role in Pokémon Go went beyond simple abundance. The game's mechanics at launch rewarded players with experience points for every Pokémon captured. Because Pidgey was so common, catching them again and again became an efficient way to level up. Trainers would gather dozens, then evolve them rapidly into Pidgeotto, during what players called Pidgey grinding. For a short time, the small bird was at the center of the global race to gain levels, its feathers tied to strategy as much as nostalgia. Despite its modest stats, Pidgey still carried charm. Its animated model hopped gently in place, wings flickering as it waited to be caught. The satisfying arc of a Pokéball tossed through the air often landed first on Pidgey, giving players their early lessons in accuracy. And while stronger Pokémon were needed for gym battles, many players fondly remembered their early teams filled with flocks of Pidgey evolving into loyal Pidgeotto. Pidgeot, too, found a place in the game. When fully evolved, its tall figure and flowing crest made it an impressive sight perched atop gyms in the early months. Though later updates introduced more powerful flying types, Pidgeot still stood as a symbol of those first weeks when every Pokémon felt new and every capture brought excitement. For communities around the world, the presence of Pidgey became part of the shared language of Pokémon Go. Stories of catching 10 Pidgey in a single block, or evolving them during lucky eggs to maximize experience, spread quickly online. The bird became both a practical tool and a symbol of the game's early simplicity. Looking back now, Pidgey in Pokémon Go is remembered with fondness. It may not have been rare or powerful, but it was everywhere, quietly guiding players through their first steps in a new kind of adventure. Just as it had filled Route 1 in the Game Boy games, Pidgey filled our neighborhoods and parks, reminding us that beginnings can be found in the most ordinary places. Chapter 25. Mega Pidgeot. In 2014, with the release of Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Pidgeot received a gift that elevated it from a familiar companion to a true powerhouse. This gift was Mega Evolution, a transformation that allowed certain Pokémon to tap into hidden potential during battle. For longtime fans who had raised Pidgey on the earliest routes, seeing Pidgeot soar into battle with new strength was both surprising and thrilling. Mega Pidgeot's appearance was striking. When it evolved in battle using Pidgeotite, its crest of feathers extended into a flowing cascade of gold and red. The wings spread wider, feathers sharper and more defined, giving it the appearance of a ruler of the skies. Its eyes glowed with determination, and its cry deepened, echoing with commanding power. What had once been a reliable but modest bird now stood majestic, regal, and undeniably strong. The changes were not just visual. Mega Pidgeot gained the ability No Guard, a trait that ensured its moves would always strike their targets. This made its signature attack, Hurricane, a move that normally carried low accuracy, suddenly unstoppable. With a guaranteed hit, Mega Pidgeot could summon fierce gales that battered opponents, pairing elegance with devastating force. Trainers who had once relied on Pidgeot for steady but modest support now found it capable of sweeping through teams with raw speed and precision. The transformation also carried emotional weight. For years, Pidgeot had been overshadowed by flashier Pokémon. It was beloved for its reliability, but it rarely stood at the center of competitive teams or storylines. Mega Evolution changed that. For the first time, Pidgeot was not simply a companion from the early game. It was a contender, a creature that demanded respect on the battlefield. Fans who had cherished it since the days of Route 1 felt a quiet pride in seeing it shine. In animation, Mega Pidgeot's presence was equally commanding. Its wings seemed to stretch beyond the screen, feathers glinting in the light as it hovered above the battlefield. The sight of its golden crest streaming behind it evoked the image of a guardian spirit, fierce yet graceful. Its speed, already impressive, was heightened further, making it one of the fastest flyers of its generation. Mega Evolution itself was designed to be temporary, fading at the end of battle. This fleeting quality made each transformation feel special. Watching Pidgeot glow with energy, feathers expanding into brilliance, and then later return to its standard form, carried a quiet symbolism. It reminded players of the potential that lies hidden, even in the most familiar companions. For longtime trainers, Mega Pidgeot was more than just a new form. It was a celebration of loyalty. The small Pidgey caught at the beginning of a journey could, through care and persistence, one day become not only a majestic Pidgeot, but something even greater. With Mega Evolution, the humble bird finally claimed its moment as king of the skies. Chapter 26. Base Set Origins. When the Pokémon trading card game first arrived outside Japan in 1999, children opened booster packs filled with possibilities. The base set introduced the world to a new way of connecting with Pokémon, and among the cards tucked into those early packs were Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot. For many collectors, these were the first glimpses of the bird line in printed form, captured not on a screen but on glossy cardboard that could be held in the hand. The Pidgey card showed the small brown bird in a natural pose. Wings spread slightly as if ready to flutter into flight. Its attack gust dealt a modest 10 damage, simple yet faithful to the bird's role in the games. Its low health made it fragile, but for young players just learning the rules, Pidgey was easy to understand. It taught the basics of attaching energy and using moves, just as Pidgey in the wild taught new trainers the basics of battling. Pidgeotto's card carried more strength. With sharper colors and a proud stance, it reflected the evolution's bolder personality. Its moves included Whirlwind, an effect that forced opponents to switch their active Pokémon. This mirrored Pidgeotto's role in the anime and games as a disruptive fighter, not just a direct attacker. The card reminded players that sometimes strategy was as important as raw power. Then came Pidgeot, one of the rarer cards in the set. Its artwork presented the majestic bird with flowing crest feathers, captured mid-flight. Pidgeot was a Stage 2 card, requiring patience to play, but its rewards were striking. Its hurricane attack dealt 30 damage and carried the added effect of sending the opponent's active Pokémon back to their hand if it was knocked out. For children sitting on bedroom floors with binders and decks, pulling a holographic Pidgeot felt like holding something truly special. The rainbow shine across its feathers made it one of the treasures of early collections. The inclusion of the Pidgey line in the base set carried symbolic weight. Just as Pidgey was often the first Pokémon encountered in the video games, it became one of the first cards encountered in the TCG. Opening a pack and finding Pidgey mirrored the feeling of stepping into Route 1 and hearing the rustle of wings. It tied the experience of playing cards to the memories of playing games and watching the anime. For many fans, these cards were not only tools for battling, but also keepsakes. They were traded in schoolyards, displayed in protective sleeves, and remembered long after the rules of the game faded. Holding a base set Pidgeot was like holding a piece of the franchise's history, a reminder of beginnings, of simple joys, and of the magic that spread across the world when Pokémon first took flight. Chapter 27: Early TCG Play. In the early days of the Pokémon trading card game, strategy was still taking shape. Children filled binders with favorites, shuffled together decks of mismatched cards, and played games that were often as much about imagination as about rules. Within this atmosphere, the Pidgey line found its place. Though not the most competitive, Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot were valued for their familiarity, their artwork, and their connection to the earliest adventures. The base set Pidgey was simple, carrying just one attack, Gust for 10 damage. With 40 hit points, it was fragile, but it represented something comforting. Many young players included it in their decks, not because it was powerful, but because it was recognizable. Holding Pidgey on a card felt like catching it on Route 1 all over again. Pidgeotto offered a little more depth. Its whirlwind attack forced the opponent to switch their active Pokémon, which could disrupt strategies or buy time. It was not a move that won games outright, but it carried a sense of cleverness, echoing Pidgeotto's role in the anime as a disruptive, agile bird. Children playing in schoolyards often remembered the surprise of having their strong Pokémon whisked back to the bench by this mid-stage card. Pidgeot's holographic card was the most memorable of the line. With its sweeping artwork and shining foil, it often became a centerpiece in collections. Its hurricane attack was powerful for the time, dealing 30 damage and carrying an effect that could return energy cards to the opponent's hand. Yet in competitive circles, Pidgeot was not a common choice. It required evolving twice, which was slow compared to faster strategies built around basic Pokémon like Hitmonchan, Electabuzz, or Scyther. For casual players, however, these details mattered little. The thrill of placing a gleaming Pidgeot on the table was reward enough. In the early tournaments of the TCG, Pidgeot was rarely seen in winning decks, but it was often seen in binders. Collectors treasured the card's beauty, and children proudly traded or showed theirs to friends. It became a kind of status symbol, not for its strength in competition, but for its place in the very first set. The card's soft rainbow sheen reflected light in a way that felt magical, and for many, it was one of the first holographic cards they ever owned. These early years of the TCG were less about optimization and more about joy. A deck might mix Pidgey with fire types, water types, and whatever else a player had on hand. Games often ended in laughter, with rules bent or forgotten. Within that playful space, Pidgeot's card stood tall, not as a competitive powerhouse, but as a reminder of the wonder that came from holding a piece of Pokémon's world in your hands. For fans looking back, the Pidgey line in the base set represents innocence. It was about discovery, about learning the game, and about feeling connected to the Pokémon they had grown to love. Even if Pidgeot rarely won battles on the tabletop, it won hearts in schoolyards and living rooms around the world. Chapter 28. The FireRed and LeafGreen Pidgeot. By the time the EX FireRed and LeafGreen expansion released in 2004, the Pokémon trading card game had grown far more competitive. Decks were built with precise strategies, tournaments had become serious contests, and players studied each new set for cards that could give them an edge. It was in this environment that Pidgeot finally had its moment of true competitive glory. The Pidgeot card from this set carried the Poké power known as Quick Search. Once during each turn, the player could search their deck for any single card and place it in their hand. There were no restrictions beyond the one per turn limit. This ability was extraordinary. In a game where consistency and access to key cards determined victory, Quick Search gave players complete control. It allowed them to fetch energy when needed, grab a trainer card at the perfect time, or secure the evolution that would win a battle. To make use of Pidgeot, players had to evolve from Pidgeot to Pidgeotto, and then to the Stage 2 Pidgeot. This required patience and planning, but the payoff was enormous. Once on the field, Pidgeot became the engine that kept a deck running smoothly. It was not used for its attacks, though it carried respectable moves like Clutch, but rather for the stability that Quick Search brought. In competitive play, Pidgeot became a staple in several of the most successful decks of the era. Archetypes like LBS, a combination of Lugia X, Blastoise X, and Steelix X, often included Pidgeot as the support that made the strategy work. By pulling exactly the right card at the right time, Quick Search allowed these powerful combinations to unfold consistently. Other decks, from fire-focused builds to disruptive strategies, leaned on Pidgeot for the same reason. Whatever the plan, Quick Search gave it reliability. For casual players, this version of Pidgeot carried appeal as well. The artwork depicted the bird with its golden crest flowing in the wind, eyes sharp with intelligence. It looked like a creature capable of finding whatever was needed, perfectly matching the theme of its ability. Collectors treasured the card, not only for its competitive value but also for its beauty. This moment in the TCG's history was special for fans of the bird line. For years, Pidgeot had been admired for loyalty and grace, but had rarely stood out in competition. The FireRed and LeafGreen card changed that, giving it recognition as one of the most influential support Pokémon ever printed. For players who loved the line since the earliest days, it felt like validation, proof that their humble Route 1 bird could stand at the heart of winning strategies. Looking back, Quick Search Pidgeot remains one of the most iconic cards of the EX era. It was powerful, consistent, and beloved. In both tournaments and collections, it gave Pidgeot the spotlight it had long deserved, soaring high, not just in the skies of the anime, but also on the tabletop. Chapter 29: EX and Mega Cards. As the Pokémon trading card game entered the XY era in the mid-2010s, Pidgeot once again took flight with bold new designs. This time, the bird was given the spotlight through powerful EX and Mega Cards, bringing it into battles with striking artwork and effects that reflected its majesty. For longtime fans, these cards were both a celebration of nostalgia and a chance to see the Pidgey line soar at a competitive level once more. The first of these was Pidgeot EX, released in the Breakthrough expansion in 2015. The card featured the majestic bird in sweeping art, wings extended wide and crest feathers flowing as if caught in a powerful wind. Its attacks were Feather Lance, which dealt damage to both the active Pokémon and one on the opponent's bench, and Mirror Move, which echoed back the damage Pidgeot had just taken. These effects carried a balance of grace and strategy, not overwhelming on their own, but clever and fitting for a Pokémon long known for agility and precision. Soon after came Mega Pidgeot EX, included in the XY Evolution set of 2016. This set was designed as a nostalgic tribute to the original base set, reprinting classic artwork while introducing modern mechanics. Mega Pidgeot EX captured that feeling beautifully. Its golden feathers gleamed in bold art, with lines of motion that gave the sense of incredible speed. Its attack, Max Cyclone, dealt significant damage while also forcing the opponent to switch their active Pokémon. The effect was disruptive, controlling the flow of the battle, much like Pidgeot had done in the anime, when scattering foes with gusts of wind. For collectors, these cards were treasures. The full art versions shimmered with holographic effects, and the Mega Card's stylized lettering across the top added a sense of drama. They stood out in binders and displays, a reminder that Pidgeot had risen from a modest early root bird to a centerpiece of modern expansions. For competitive players, Pidgeot EX and its Mega form offered solid but balanced tools. They were not the most dominant cards of the format, yet they found their way into decks that valued their disruptive effects. Mega Pidgeot EX in particular gave players the ability to control match tempo, echoing the role of Quick Search Pidgeot a decade earlier. The release of these cards also carried symbolic weight. The Evolution set was released during the franchise's 20th anniversary, a celebration of the journey from Kanto to the modern day. Including Pidgeot among the stars of this tribute, acknowledged its place in Pokémon history. It was one of the very first birds to guide trainers on their journeys, and now it stood proudly once more, dazzling in golden plumage. For fans who had caught Pidgey on Route 1 as children, seeing Mega Pidgeot EX in a glittering card felt like meeting an old friend who had grown into something extraordinary. The cards reminded us that even the most common beginnings can lead to majestic heights. Chapter 30: Evolution's Reprints. In 2016, the Pokémon trading card game celebrated the franchise's 20th anniversary with a special expansion, XY Evolutions. This set was designed as both a tribute and a bridge, reintroducing the classic base set cards with modern updates. For many players and collectors, it was a chance to relive the wonder of opening their very first booster packs back in 1999. Among the familiar faces brought back in shining new form were Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot. The reprinted cards closely echoed their original designs. Pidgeot, once again a rare holo, shimmered with a rainbow foil that called back to the days when pulling it felt like a small miracle. Its hurricane attack remained, updated slightly for modern rules but still recognizable to anyone who had held the base set version. This continuity between past and present gave the card a nostalgic glow. Holding the new print felt like holding a memory, made fresh once more. Pidgey and Pidgeotto also returned with updated artwork that balanced simplicity and clarity. Their cards carried the same approachable quality as their base set counterparts, easy to understand for new players while offering a touch of nostalgia for veterans. For those who remembered playing the early TCG with friends in classrooms and living rooms, these reprints brought a wave of warm familiarity. Evolutions was more than just a reprint set. It was a celebration. It marked 2 decades of Pokémon, reminding fans of the journey from the earliest days of Kanto to the modern world of XY. In that celebration, Pidgeot's inclusion carried special meaning. It reinforced the idea that even common Pokémon deserved honor. Pidgeot was not a legendary or a powerhouse in the competitive scene, yet it was chosen to represent the memory of the base set era. Its presence was a nod to the countless trainers who had caught Pidgey on Route 1 and raised it with care. For collectors, Evolution's cards became treasures in their own right. The holographic Pidgeot was displayed proudly alongside classic holos, often placed side by side in binders to show the passage of time. For younger players who had never opened the original base set, Evolutions provided a taste of that history. For older fans, it was a way to reconnect with their childhood. In casual play, the cards were simple but fun. Children once again placed Pidgey on their tables, evolved it into Pidgeotto, and dreamed of drawing the Pidgeot card to complete the line. The cycle repeated, reminding everyone that the joy of Pokémon is not only about winning, but also about the stories these cards tell. In the end, XY Evolutions gave the Pidgey line one more moment in the spotlight, not through innovation or power, but through memory. The set honored the birds of Route 1 for what they had always been, symbols of beginnings, of growth, and of the timeless bond between trainer and Pokémon. Chapter 31: Pidgey Line Across Generations. The Pidgey family did not remain confined to the early years of the trading card game. Across the decades, they continued to appear in expansions, their wings stretching into every new era of design. From the late days of the Neo series to the vibrant colors of Sword and Shield, Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot were never forgotten. Each reappearance was like a familiar song returning, steady and reassuring amid the ever-expanding roster of Pokémon. After the base set years, the bird line re-emerged in Johto-themed expansions. Sets like Neo Destiny and Neo Revelation included fresh illustrations of Pidgey and Pidgeotto, capturing them in new styles that reflected the artistic growth of the TCG. These cards often depicted them perched in quiet forests or mid-flight above gentle skies. Though not flashy, they carried warmth, evoking the same calm presence the birds gave to the anime. In the e-reader era, expansions such as Skyridge continued to showcase the Pidgey line. The artwork of these sets became more experimental, with softer colors and dreamlike settings. Pidgeot, in particular, received cards that highlighted its majesty, wings outstretched against glowing skies. For collectors, these cards stood out not for competitive power, but for artistry. They became pieces to admire in binders, each illustration a new interpretation of a familiar Pokémon. The X series of the early 2000s gave Pidgeot more attention, continuing its momentum after the competitive success of FireRed and LeafGreen. Though not every card was a tournament staple, each showed the bird in dynamic poses, often gliding at full speed or watching from high vantage points. These depictions echoed its role as a protector and scout, true to its roots in the games and anime. As the years passed, the line appeared in sets tied to newer generations as well. In Diamond and Pearl and Heart Gold and Soul Silver expansions, Pidgey cards reappeared with artwork that leaned into nostalgia, often showing the small bird in peaceful everyday scenes. Later, in the Sword and Shield era, the Pidgey family once again found space in expansions. New illustrations highlighted its timeless role, a simple bird, approachable and familiar, yet still graceful when fully evolved into Pidgeot. These recurring appearances underscored the Pidgey line's enduring popularity. It was never forgotten, never left behind as just an early game Pokémon. Instead, it was treated as part of the franchise's fabric, deserving of attention in every era. Collectors opening packs, decades after the base set, could still find a Pidgey or a Pidgeot waiting for them, a reminder of how far the series had flown while still honoring its beginnings. For fans, these cards were like old friends returning. Each new expansion brought with it the thrill of discovery, but also the comfort of recognition. No matter how the artwork evolved or how the mechanics changed, the presence of Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot carried a message. Some companions never leave the skies. Chapter 32. The Early Root Bird Trope. From the moment players stepped into the tall grass outside Pallet Town and saw their first Pidgey, a pattern was set. The idea of an early route bird became a defining feature of Pokémon design, one that carried through every new generation. These birds were not legendary or rare. Instead, they were common, approachable, and ready to join a young trainer at the very start of their journey. Pidgey was the first of its kind, and every bird that followed carried its legacy. In Johto, players encountered Hoothoot, a round-eyed owl that appeared at night, introducing the rhythm of day and night cycles into the games. It filled the same role as Pidgey, small, simple, and familiar, but carried a regional twist, showing how the trope could adapt to new settings. In Hoenn, Tylo took flight. Quick and spirited, it evolved into the sleek Swellow, a bird that embodied speed and courage. Just as Pidgey had evolved into Pidgeot, Tylo gave players the sense of raising a small bird into a soaring partner. Sinnoh offered Scarlet, a tiny gray bird with a cheerful cry. Though fragile at first, it evolved into Staravia and then Staraptor, one of the most beloved bird evolutions of the series. Fans often compared its fierce final form to Pidgeot, noting the shared role of protector and predator in the skies. The pattern continued with Pidove in Unova, Fletchling in Kalos, Pikipek in Alola, Rookidee in Galar, and most recently, Watrel in Paldea. Each carried the same role, the small bird you could catch within minutes of starting your journey, yet each reflected the spirit of its region. Fletchling, for example, introduced fire typing upon evolution, while Rookidee became a steel-winged knight as Corviknight. Despite these variations, the foundation always traced back to Pidgey. Its cautious nature, its gentle introduction to battling, and its evolutionary line into something majestic all shape the template. Even the structure, a three-stage evolution from small and timid to large and powerful, became the model most later birds followed. For players, this consistency created a comforting rhythm. No matter where the new adventure took place, forests, islands, snowy mountains, or distant continents, there was always a bird waiting on the first route. It was as if Pidgey's spirit had been carried forward, its wings echoing across generations. In this way, Pidgey's role became larger than its individual story. It became a tradition. The early root bird was not just a design choice, but a symbol of beginnings, of the first companion to take flight alongside the player. For every child catching their first Pokémon in Johto, Hoenn, or Beyond, the experience mirrored what Kanto players felt when they first saw a small brown bird rise from the grass. Though many new birds would come, Pidgey remains the original. Its wings set the pattern, and its presence in memory ensures that every early root bird carries a touch of its legacy. Chapter 33. Merchandise and Media. The story of Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot extends far beyond the anime, video games, and trading cards. Like so many beloved Pokémon, the bird line has also been captured in merchandise and official media, finding its way into the homes and collections of fans around the world. From soft plush toys to glossy handbooks, their presence outside of battles has quietly reinforced their role as companions of the everyday Pokémon world. One of the earliest forms of merchandise was plush figures. Pidgey was made into a small, rounded toy with soft brown fabric and stitched wings, designed to resemble the gentle bird children first met on Route 1. It was not as flashy as Pikachu or as fierce as Charizard, but its simplicity carried charm. Pidgeotto and Pidgeot also received plush versions, often larger and more detailed, their crests sewn with bright red and gold thread. For many young fans, these toys became comfort objects, perched on desks or bedsides, reminding them of the skies of Kanto. Figures and models also gave the bird line a physical presence. Companies like Tomy and Hasbro released Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot figurines, often bundled with other early game Pokémon. Small enough to fit in a pocket, these figures were used in imaginative play, recreating battles, or simply standing as decorations. Pidgeot's outstretched wings made it one of the more dynamic sculpts of the era, often shown mid-flight, talons extended. Official Pokémon handbooks and Pokédex guides also gave the line a prominent place. Because the Pokédex was ordered numerically, Pidgey appeared very early in these books, usually within the first few pages. Children flipping through glossy guides would see it alongside Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle, reinforcing its status as a foundational part of the Pokémon world. Full-page illustrations of Pidgeotto and Pidgeot often highlighted their plumage, teaching readers about their evolutions and movesets in ways that felt approachable and fun. The bird line also appeared on posters, calendars, and school supplies. Their images could be found on lunchboxes, notebooks, and stickers, often grouped with other common Kanto Pokémon. Though they were not always the stars of the merchandise, their inclusion gave these items a sense of completeness. It was as if no portrayal of the Pokémon world would feel whole without a flock of Pidgeys somewhere in the corner. For fans, these everyday products carried the same quiet presence as the birds in the anime. They were not meant to dazzle or dominate, but to remind. A small figure on a shelf, a sticker on a binder, or a page in a handbook was enough to bring back memories of Ash's early captures, or of wandering through grassy fields in the games. Over time, this steady stream of merchandise ensured that Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot remained visible, even when they were not central to the newest games or shows. Their presence in toys, books, and collectibles quietly affirmed their place in the Pokémon legacy, not as rare legends but as faithful companions always nearby. Chapter 34. Symbol of Beginnings. For many fans, Pidgey was more than just another Pokémon. It was the very first wild creature they saw rustling in the tall grass outside Pallet Town. That moment, simple yet profound, shaped the way generations of players understood what it meant to start a journey. Pidgey became a symbol of beginnings, gentle, approachable, and always there to remind trainers of their first steps. In the video games, encountering Pidgey so early was a deliberate choice. Its design was familiar, almost ordinary, like the birds that fill real skies. This made it less intimidating than Pokémon with fiery tails or venomous stingers. For a new trainer, catching a Pidgey was like learning the rules of the world. Its modest strength and straightforward moves taught patience. Its presence was reassuring, proof that even the smallest start could lead to growth. In the anime, Ash's early capture of Pidgeotto carried the same theme. While Pikachu was his partner from the start, it was Pidgeotto that showed him what it meant to expand his team. The capture was not dramatic or flashy. It was steady and practical. This lesson stayed with viewers. Building a journey was not about rushing to legends, but about appreciating the common companions along the way. The trading card game reinforced this identity. Pidgey's base set card was simple, with only one attack. It was often one of the first cards children played when learning the rules. In that way, Pidgey became a teacher of beginnings, guiding players through the first steps of strategy, just as it guided them through the first patches of grass in the games. Over time, new generations of Pokémon introduced their own early route birds. Hoot, Talo, Starly, and many others filled the skies of their regions. Yet Pidgey remained the original. Its cautious nature, small wings, and evolution into something majestic became the model. Every new bird carried a trace of its legacy, but Pidgey's role as the first could never be replaced. For fans looking back, the nostalgia is powerful. The memory of catching a Pidgey or evolving one into Pidgeotto feels like revisiting a childhood milestone. It recalls afternoons spent walking through pixelated grass, mornings watching Ash train on television, and evenings trading cards with friends. Pidgey is not remembered for rare power, but for its quiet consistency, the way it was always there, at the start, ready to accompany a new adventure. In this way, Pidgey became more than a common bird. It became a symbol of potential. Every trainer begins with small steps, uncertain but hopeful. And every Pidgey, perched in the grass or gliding through the sky, carries the reminder that even the humblest beginnings can grow into something extraordinary. Chapter 35. Ash's Farewell to Pidgeot. Among the many heartfelt moments in the Pokémon anime, few linger as quietly in memory as Ash's goodbye to his Pidgeot. It was not the first time he released a partner, nor would it be the last, but the scene carried a sense of maturity and trust that left a lasting impression. For a bird that had been with him since his earliest days in Kanto, the farewell marked both an ending and a beginning. The story unfolded in the episode Palette Party Panic, which aired near the close of the Indigo League arc. After returning to Palette Town, Ash soon found himself and his friends caught in the midst of trouble. A flock of wild Pidgey and Pidgeotto were being harassed by a group of Fearow led by a fierce, aggressive Fearow that Ash recognized as the same Spearow he had encountered way back in the very first episode. The moment tied the narrative together, connecting the start of Ash's journey to this chapter of homecoming. Ash's own Pidgeotto evolved into Pidgeot during the battle, rising to protect the flock with newfound strength. With broad wings and a commanding cry, Pidgeot drove back the Fearow, saving the smaller birds from danger. It was a powerful transformation, but also a natural progression of its role. From the start, Ash's bird had been reliable and courageous, often battling with determination even when the odds were high. Now, as Pidgeot, it took on the mantle of guardian. After the victory, Ash made the difficult decision to leave Pidgeot behind. He asked it to stay with the flock, to keep them safe from Fearow's return. The choice was not made lightly. Ash promised he would come back for it one day, a vow that showed how much he valued their bond. The scene was bittersweet. Ash standing in the open field, Pikachu by his side, watching Pidgeot circle overhead. The bird cried out one final time before soaring into the distance, wings flashing in the sunlight. The farewell carried weight because Pidgeot had been with Ash for so long. From its first appearance as Pidgeotto, helping him in battles and scouting ahead, To its final moment of evolution and leadership, it had been a steady companion. Its departure underscored a theme the anime returned to often, that sometimes caring for Pokémon means letting them go, trusting them to find their own path. Fans remember this goodbye with quiet emotion. Some hoped for Pidgeot's return in later seasons, recalling Ash's promise. Though the anime introduced many new companions in each region, Pidgeot's absence left a soft ache, a reminder of the bonds left behind. Ash's farewell to Pidgeot was not about loss alone. It was about growth. Both trainer and Pokémon had reached a point where their paths diverged, and in that parting was a deep respect. It showed that true friendship means more than traveling together. It means believing in one another's future, even apart. Chapter 36: Pidgeot's Absence and Legacy. After Ash said goodbye to Pidgeot in Palette Party Panic, the bird did not return in the following seasons. For many fans, this absence became one of the most lingering threads in the anime. Ash had promised to come back, to reunite with the loyal partner that had protected the flock of Pidgey and Pidgeotto. Yet as the years passed, and Ash journeyed through Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh and Beyond, Pidgeot's name was rarely spoken. Its absence grew into a quiet legend among viewers. This silence gave the farewell an even deeper weight. Unlike Butterfree, whose release was framed with finality, Pidgeot's departure carried an open-ended promise. Ash's vow to return made fans wonder if one day the bird might swoop down from the skies to rejoin his team. Each new region brought the hope of reunion. But season after season, the skies remained empty of Pidgeot's proud silhouette. Despite its physical absence, the legacy of Ash's Pidgeot endured. Its memory surfaced in the way Ash continued to bond with other early route birds like Tylo, Starly, and Fletchling. Each time he captured a new regional bird, fans recalled his very first. The courage and loyalty of those later birds seemed to echo the spirit of Pidgeot, who had once spread its wings to protect the flock back in Pallet Town. For viewers who had followed the anime since the beginning, this lingering absence created a bond of nostalgia. Pidgeot became a symbol of unfinished stories, of promises waiting to be fulfilled. It reminded fans that not every journey closes neatly, and that sometimes the most meaningful goodbyes are the ones left open. The trading card game and later video game appearances kept the bird line visible, but in the anime, Pidgeot's absence gave it a unique aura. It was not forgotten. Instead, it lived in memory, carried by fans who had grown up alongside Ash's adventures. Forums, fan letters, and conventions often echoed with the same question: will Ash ever return for Pidgeot? When other Pokémon like Charizard, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur were brought back for special episodes, the question grew louder. Why not Pidgeot too? Each return made its absence more striking, as though the anime itself was preserving the promise for a distant day. This sense of longing became part of Pidgeot's legacy. It showed how even a modest Pokémon, not a starter or a legendary, could capture hearts through consistency and loyalty. Its absence reminded fans of its importance, for sometimes the greatest presence is felt in what is missing. Though Ash's story carried on with new companions, the memory of Pidgeot endured in the minds of those who remembered that open sky, that circling flight, and that promise of reunion. The bird remained part of his legacy, waiting quietly in the distance, wings spread across memory. Chapter 37: Pidgeot's Return in Journeys. For over 2 decades, Ash's promise to return for his Pidgeot lingered in the memories of fans. Each new season brought fresh partners and exciting battles, but the skies often felt incomplete without the majestic bird that had once circled above Pallet Town. Then at last, in the series Pokémon Journeys, the story came full circle. The long-awaited reunion finally arrived, gently closing one of the most enduring threads in the anime's history. The moment came in the episode The Rainbow and the Pokémon Master, which served as a reflective conclusion to Ash's long journey. Returning home to Pallet Town, Ash once again crossed paths with the flock of Pidgey and Pidgeotto that his Pidgeot had stayed behind to protect. Time had passed, but the scene carried a familiar warmth. The forest clearing and the fluttering wings recalled the farewell so many years earlier. When Pidgeot appeared, its presence was majestic. The crest feathers flowed in the wind. Wings stretched wide as it descended from the canopy. The anime lingered on the moment, allowing viewers to absorb the weight of history. Ash's eyes lit with recognition, and his words carried both surprise and joy. After so long, the promise was honored. The bird he had left to guard the flock had not been forgotten, neither by Ash nor by the story itself. Ash embraced the reunion as naturally as breathing. He thanked Pidgeot for its loyalty and acknowledged the years of protection it had given to the flock. The Pokemon's cry echoed with strength, not of battle but of reassurance. This was no longer a farewell. It was a welcome home. For the audience, the moment felt almost like a whisper across time, connecting the early days of 1997 to the modern era. Unlike earlier goodbyes, this reunion did not lead to another parting. Ash invited Pidgeot back onto his team, fulfilling the vow he had made in the Indigo League days. The flock, now strong and independent, no longer needed a guardian. With that duty complete, Pidgeot could spread its wings alongside Ash once again. The circle was closed. The significance of this return was not just in the reunion itself, but in what it represented. It reminded viewers that promises matter, even if they take years to fulfill. It showed that bonds between trainer and Pokémon do not fade with time or distance. For longtime fans, the scene carried both nostalgia and closure. The bird that had symbolized beginnings now symbolized continuity, linking Ash's first days with his final steps as a traveling trainer. For those who had grown up watching, the reunion was a gentle reminder. Some friendships endure across decades, waiting patiently for the right moment to take flight again. Chapter 38. Later Generations. As the Pokémon series expanded into new regions, the skies never truly felt empty. While each generation introduced its own early route bird, the Pidgey line continued to appear, weaving threads of familiarity across the ever-growing world. From Sinnoh's forests to Alola's sunny routes, players could still hear the flutter of wings that had once filled the grasses outside Pallet Town. In Sinnoh, Pidgey itself was not part of the initial regional Pokédex, but through trades and later expansions in Platinum and Heart Gold and Soul Silver connectivity, it could still find its way into the region. Trainers who transferred their loyal birds discovered how Pidgeot's graceful form looked with the updated graphics of the Nintendo DS. The smoother animations gave the bird new life, crest feathers swaying more naturally than ever before. In Unova, Game Freak initially chose to spotlight new species only, leaving Pidgey absent from the regional Pokédex. Yet even in its absence, players felt its influence through Pidove, the local early route bird. Its cautious nature and eventual evolution into the stronger Unpheasant echoed Pidgey's pattern, reminding trainers of the line that had started it all. And once again, post-game mechanics allowed familiar Kanto Pokémon to return, bringing Pidgey back into teams after the main story. Kalos offered another layer of nostalgia. With Pokémon X and Y, the series introduced full 3D models for the first time, and Pidgey appeared once more. Early in the game, players could encounter it fluttering in the tall grass of Route 2, a deliberate nod to its role as the very first wild encounter of the original games. Watching Pidgeot glide through battles in full 3D felt like seeing an old friend in a new light, more detailed, more alive, yet still recognizable. In Alola, the regional Pokédex did not feature Pidgey, instead focusing on Pikipek as the new local bird. Still, through the wider Pokédex and trading systems, Pidgey found its way back into players' boxes. Seeing Pidgeot flying against the tropical backdrop of Alola carried a quiet beauty, as if the bird had simply migrated to warmer skies. In Galar, the Pokédex narrowed its roster, and once again Pidgey was absent. Yet its absence was felt rather than forgotten. Rookie D filled the traditional role with its final evolution, Corviknight taking the skies in a striking new form. Even so, longtime trainers thought back to Pidgey, remembering the humble bird that had first defined the early route tradition. Most recently, in Paldea, Pidgey reappeared in Scarlet and Violet as part of the expanding Pokédex. Seeing flocks of Pidgey wandering the open fields carried a sense of return. After years of rotating rosters, the small bird was back in its natural role, approachable, familiar, and always nearby for new trainers setting out on their first steps. Across every generation, whether present or absent, Pidgey's shadow lingered. When it appeared, it felt like home. When it was missing, its spirit was carried by others. Through Sinnoh, Unova, Kalos, Alola, Galar, and Paldea, the legacy of the Pidgey line reminded players that some companions never truly vanish. They are always waiting, somewhere in the skies. Chapter 39: Competitive Battling. In casual play, the Pidgey line was remembered as a companion of beginnings, but in the world of competitive battling, its role was more complicated. For much of its history, Pidgeot was overshadowed by stronger flying types. Yet with patience, it carved out memorable moments, and for a time, even rose to real prominence through its mega evolution. In the earliest generations, Pidgeot struggled to stand out. In Red and Blue, its stats were balanced but not overwhelming. Its speed was respectable, but its attack and special attack lagged behind other birds like Dodrio or Fearow. Moves like wing attack and agility gave it some utility, but competitive players often favored faster or more powerful choices. Still, in friendly battles, many trainers used Pidgeot out of loyalty, enjoying the sight of its flowing crest and steady presence. As the series moved forward into Gold and Silver, and then Ruby and Sapphire, the competitive scene became even harsher. Pokémon with stronger abilities, more versatile move pools, or higher stats often left Pidgeot behind. Its normal flying typing gave it common weaknesses, especially to electric and rock-type moves. Even so, in smaller fan-driven formats, or casual play, it remained a popular pick, valued more for nostalgia than for dominance. Everything changed with the introduction of Mega Pidgeot in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Suddenly, the bird of Route 1 transformed into a fierce contender. With a base special attack of 135 and speed of 121, it became one of the fastest and strongest special attackers available. Its ability, No Guard, guaranteed that all of its moves would hit. This turned Hurricane, a move with devastating power but low accuracy, into a reliable weapon. Every turn, Mega Pidgeot could summon powerful gales that struck without fail. In competitive play, Mega Pidgeot found a home in mid-tier formats. It excelled at breaking through unprepared teams, forcing opponents to adapt or be swept away by endless hurricanes. Its speed allowed it to outspeed many common threats, while its access to U-turn gave it pivoting utility, letting it strike and then retreat to safety. Though it still struggled against dedicated special walls or Pokémon with rock-type moves, it carved a niche as a dangerous and reliable attacker. Players celebrated this transformation. For years, Pidgeot had been overlooked, remembered more for its loyalty in the anime than for strength in battle. With Mega Evolution, it finally claimed a moment in the spotlight. Many trainers who had raised Pidgey in childhood returned to the competitive scene with pride, now able to use their old favorite in serious matches. When Mega Evolutions faded from later games, Pidgeot returned to its quieter role, once again more symbolic than dominant. Yet the memory of Mega Pidgeot's soaring presence remained. For a time, the humble Route 1 bird had risen above expectations, proving that even the most common beginnings could carry hidden strength. Chapter 40. Sun and Moon Era Cards. When the Sun and Moon era of the Pokémon trading card game began in 2017, the Alola region brought new mechanics, new designs, and a brighter artistic style. Though the spotlight often shone on Alolan Pokémon and the powerful new GX cards, the Pidgey line continued to appear, keeping its steady place in the skies of the TCG. These cards were quieter than the headliners, but they reflected the timeless presence of the bird family. Pidgey received several cards across this era, often illustrated perched on branches or fluttering close to the ground. The artwork emphasized its gentleness, reminding players of its role as a common but faithful companion. One card showed Pidgey gazing up at the sky, wings partly lifted as though ready to join the flocks above. Its attacks remained simple: gust, sand attack, and quick strikes that dealt modest damage. These moves echoed its early game role, easy for new players to understand and faithful to its depiction in the main series. Pidgeotto 2 received fresh artwork during the Sun and Moon years. One notable card from the Team Up expansion in 2019 gave Pidgeotto an unexpected moment of competitive relevance. Its ability, Airmail, allowed players to look at the top 2 cards of their deck, choose one, and place it into their hand. This small effect became incredibly valuable in certain deck strategies, offering consistency and control. For a time, competitive players eagerly included Pidgeotto lines in their decks, showing that even a mid-stage bird could shape the pace of games. The artwork of Pidgeotto in this period often highlighted its watchful, protective nature. Feathers ruffled by the wind, it appeared ready to guide others, matching the supportive role its card played in battle. Collectors valued these illustrations not only for their beauty, but for the way they captured the character of the Pokémon itself. Pidgeot appeared less frequently, but when it did, it was depicted with grandeur. Its cards often showed the bird soaring at high altitudes, golden crest feathers flowing in the light. Though not as competitively dominant as some GX or tag team Pokémon, its cards carried a sense of dignity. They were less about raw power and more about presence, a reminder that Pidgeot remained a figure of elegance in the skies. Across the Sun and Moon era, the Pidgey line filled the same role it had always held: approachable, familiar, and steady. The cards may not have dominated tournaments, but they were part of the living world the TCG created. For young players opening packs, finding a Pidgey felt like meeting an old friend. For seasoned collectors, the line carried nostalgia, tying modern expansions back to the earliest days of Kanto. The Sun and Moon cards reminded fans that even as mechanics grew more complex, some Pokémon remained constant. Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot continued to appear, quietly anchoring the game in its roots, while letting new generations of trainers discover their place in the flock. Chapter 41. Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet cards. As the trading card game entered the Sword and Shield era in 2020, the Pidgey line continued to appear, bridging the earliest days of Kanto with the newest generation of cards. While much of the spotlight focused on V, VMAX, and later V-Star mechanics, the bird family found its place through thoughtful artwork and steady presence, quietly reminding players of their roots. Pidgey cards from this era often leaned into peaceful natural imagery. One card depicted Pidgey perched on a branch against a calm sky, a simple but beautiful reminder of its role as an ordinary bird Pokémon. Its attacks remained basic, gust and sand attack, echoing the same moves children had first learned decades earlier. For young players entering the TCG for the first time, these cards provided a gentle introduction, just as Pidgey itself had always been the first encounter in the games. Pidgeotto appeared in several sets as well, sometimes with dynamic art that showed it mid-flight, wings spread and feathers catching the sun. In one release it was drawn gliding through the treetops, sharp eyes scanning below as if protecting a flock. Its card effects reflected modest utility, often focused on drawing or small disruption, matching the supportive role Pidgeotto had carried in earlier TCG expansions. Pidgeot, meanwhile, was granted more elaborate cards. In the Sword and Shield expansions, it appeared in striking full-art designs, showing the golden crest feathers flowing like ribbons of sunlight. Though not as mechanically dominant as in its FireRed and LeafGreen days, Pidgeot's presence carried grandeur. Its attacks often centered around wind-based imagery, hurricane, gust, or brave bird, bringing its signature flight into focus. Collectors appreciated these cards not only for their play value but for their artistry, with many illustrations portraying the bird soaring high above mountains or seas. With the shift into the Scarlet and Violet era in 2023, the Pidgey line returned in even more colorful form. The new card design emphasized silver borders and bold illustration styles, and the birds benefited from this modern polish. Pidgey appeared in scenes filled with light and softness, blending naturally into the environments of Paldea. Pidgeot, in particular, was honored with special prints that highlighted its majesty. In one card, it was shown diving through clouds with streaks of light trailing behind, a symbol of grace and speed. These modern cards carried both nostalgia and renewal. For collectors who had grown up with the base set, opening packs and finding Pidgey or Pidgeot once again felt like reconnecting with the earliest days of the TCG. For new players, these cards offered an approachable entry point, proving that the birds of Route 1 still had a place in the modern game. Across Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet, the Pidgey line was not the most competitive or rare, but it was constant. It remained part of the flock that shaped the skies of the Pokémon world. A reminder that even as the TCG evolves, some companions never leave. Chapter 42. Cameos and Backgrounds. Not every appearance of the Pidgey line is tied to a major battle or dramatic storyline. Often they are seen in the background, fluttering through forests, perched on branches, or soaring across skies. These subtle cameos may seem small, but they are part of what makes the Pokémon world feel alive. Without them, the setting would feel empty. With them, the world gains depth and texture. In the early episodes of the anime, Pidgey were frequently seen in forests or meadows, blending into the environment. Sometimes they perched on treetops while Ash and his friends walked below. Other times flocks took off in the distance when startled by a battle. These moments rarely drew attention to themselves, but they gave the sense that Pokémon were everywhere, living naturally outside of the human spotlight. Pidgeotto and Pidgeot also appeared in background roles, often soaring high above towns or forests. Their larger silhouettes carried a sense of majesty, adding movement to the sky. In certain battle episodes, when the camera panned to wide shots of arenas or landscapes, sharp-eyed viewers could spot them gliding across the horizon. These touches were intentional, a way for animators to make the Pokémon world feel continuous and interconnected. The movies, too, relied on the Pidgey line for atmosphere. During sweeping introductory scenes, flocks of birds could often be seen migrating across the frame. In Pokémon 2000, for instance, the sight of Pidgey and Pidgeot flying among other species gave the world of the legendary birds more realism. Their presence reminded viewers that even extraordinary events happened in a world still filled with ordinary life. The video games followed the same philosophy. Even in later generations where Pidgey was not a regional Pokémon, their cries could sometimes be heard in background sound effects, or their forms appeared as migrating flocks in cutscenes. In Pokémon Snap and New Pokémon Snap, groups of Pidgey fluttered through early courses, not as challenges but as part of the scenery. They were there to be photographed, appreciated, and remembered. These background appearances may not seem important, but they highlight something central to the Pokémon franchise, a living world filled with both the extraordinary and the ordinary. Legendary Pokémon may command the spotlight, but it is creatures like Pidgey, filling the skies and trees, that make the world believable. Without them, the settings would feel like stages. With them, they feel like ecosystems. For fans, spotting a Pidgey cameo often sparks a smile. It is like running into an old friend in a crowd. Even if the story does not focus on them, their presence is reassuring, a reminder that the companions from the very beginning are still out there, quietly inhabiting the world. In this way, the cameos and background roles of the Pidgey line carry a kind of magic. They remind us that not every story has to be in the spotlight to matter. Sometimes it is enough just to be there, wings beating softly, keeping the world alive. Chapter 43. Symbol of Flight in Canon. From its first introduction, the Pidgey line has carried more than just the role of an early route companion. In both anime and games, Pidgeot especially has been used as a symbol of flight itself, freedom, distance, and the promise of skies that stretch beyond the horizon. This symbolism gave the bird a role larger than battles alone. In the anime, Pidgeot's wide wings and commanding cry often signaled the vastness of the world Ash was exploring. When it soared high above forests or circled in the distance, it represented more than a single Pokémon. It represented the idea of travel, of venturing into places unknown. In Palette Party Panic, its evolution into Pidgeot was framed not only as a victory against Fearow, but also as the moment it claimed the skies for its own, becoming a guardian for the flock. Its role as protector, stretching wings over the weak, reinforced its symbolic place as a bird of safety and leadership. In the games, Pidgeot's Pokédex entries often highlight its ability to fly faster than sound, or to spot prey from incredible heights. These details make it not just a large bird, but a master of the skies. Its design, with flowing crest feathers, resembles banners waving in the wind, a natural image of freedom and motion. Trainers who raised their first Pidgey into Pidgeot often felt this symbol strongly. What began as a small, grounded bird became something capable of soaring beyond sight. This symbolism was reinforced in the TCG as well. Many Pidgeot cards show the bird flying high above clouds, mountains, or seas. The artwork rarely depicts it perched or still. Instead, it is always moving, gliding, or diving. These artistic choices mirror the way players thought of it, as a Pokémon defined by movement, grace, and an unbound spirit. Even in cameos, the Pidgey line carried this imagery. In films, when flocks of Pidgeot crossed the screen, they evoked migration, journey, and continuity. In Pokémon Snap and New Pokémon Snap, Pidgeot's dramatic swoops and powerful presence reminded players of nature's balance, the predator's grace, the cycle of survival, and the beauty of wings in motion. The wider franchise has always used bird Pokémon to symbolize freedom, but Pidgeot in particular holds a unique place. It is not exotic like Lugia, nor otherworldly like Ho-Oh. Instead, it is rooted in the ordinary, transformed into something extraordinary. That symbolism resonates deeply. Anyone can begin small, and with time and patience, grow into something magnificent. For fans, the sight of Pidgeot gliding across the sky is more than a design choice. It is a reminder of why the Pokémon world feels so expansive. The skies are open, journeys are waiting, and even the most common beginnings can carry us to boundless heights. Chapter 44. Pidgey in Everyday Life. Part of Pidgey's enduring charm lies in its simplicity. Unlike the fiery Charizard or the mystical Mewtwo, Pidgey was designed to feel familiar, almost ordinary. Its round body, soft feathers, and cautious behavior were modeled after real-world birds, creatures that fill the skies of every city, town, and countryside. By grounding it in everyday life, the designers created a Pokémon that felt immediately believable. Pidgey closely resembles pigeons and sparrows, birds that are common across the globe. Its small size, gentle eyes, and muted brown coloring echo the sparrows that gather in gardens or on rooftops. Its cautious personality, often described in the Pokédex as quick to flee or stir up dust to distract attackers, matches the behavior of these real birds. They are rarely aggressive, choosing instead to scatter or avoid confrontation. Pidgeotto's design expands on this realism. With sharper feathers and a larger frame, it mirrors the transition of many birds from fledgling to adult. The red crest feathers recall birds such as hawks or pheasants, while its talons suggest the predator's strength beginning to emerge. In nature, this stage resembles the time when young birds leave the nest, exploring the world with more confidence, but still lacking the full majesty of adulthood. Pidgeot completes the picture. With flowing golden feathers and wings described as swift enough to break the sound barrier, it represents the beauty and power of a fully grown raptor. Its design draws inspiration from falcons and eagles, birds that rule the skies with keen sight and unmatched speed. The transition from Pidgey to Pidgeot mirrors the journey from the common to the extraordinary, a theme that resonates strongly with trainers who raise the line in the games. This grounding in everyday bird life also explains why Pidgey feels so natural in the Pokémon world. Unlike dragons or mythical beasts, it does not stretch the imagination too far. Children could step outside, see a sparrow or pigeon flutter by, and believe that a Pidgey might be nearby as well. It blurred the line between fantasy and reality in a gentle way, making the world of Pokémon feel closer to our own. Merchandise and artwork have often leaned into this realism. Pidgey is usually shown perched in trees, pecking at the ground, or fluttering in small groups. These depictions emphasize its ordinariness, and yet that ordinariness is its strength. It represents the everyday wonder of nature, reminding players that not every creature needs to be rare or powerful to matter. For fans, the connection to real birds makes Pidgey approachable and nostalgic. It feels like a childhood memory, the small bird you might have watched from a window or heard singing at dawn. By translating these familiar moments into a Pokémon design, Game Freak created a character that endures across generations. Pidgey is not just part of the Pokémon world. It is also part of ours, a reflection of the ordinary birds that fill the skies each day. And in that reflection lies its quiet magic, the reminder that wonder can be found in even the most familiar shapes of life. Chapter 45. Cultural Nostalgia. For many fans, Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot are not remembered through competitive records or legendary battles. Instead, they are remembered through the quiet corners of childhood, the schoolyard trades, the first Game Boy screens glowing at night, the simple thrill of pulling a card from a booster pack. The Pidgey line became part of cultural memory not because it was rare but because it was everywhere. In the early days of the franchise, children often caught Pidgey as their very first wild Pokémon in Red and Blue. That moment became a shared experience. Decades later, countless players can recall the same image, walking into the tall grass on Route 1, encountering a Pidgey, and nervously throwing their first Pokéball. For some, it was the very first time they ever caught anything in a video game. That memory, repeated across millions of players, cemented Pidgey as a universal symbol of starting out. The trading card game deepened this bond. While holographic Charizards and Blastoise cards dominated the spotlight, many children's first cards were simpler ones: Pidgey, Pidgeotto, or Pidgeot. These cards traveled through binders, shoeboxes, and lunchroom trades. A shiny Pidgeot, even if not the rarest, was treasured by the child who pulled it, held with pride and shown to friends. The glow of the holographic feathers became a point of wonder, a small treasure that connected to playground stories and endless conversations. The anime also contributed to this sense of cultural nostalgia. Ash's Pidgeotto was one of his earliest captured Pokémon, a dependable partner seen in dozens of episodes. Its presence was steady, and its eventual evolution into Pidgeot created one of the show's most emotional farewells. For children watching in the late 1990s, those episodes left a quiet impression. To this day, fans still recall Pidgeot as the partner that carried Ash through early battles, and the promise that lingered after their parting. Even beyond the core media, the Pidgey line became a kind of inside reference among fans. When Pokémon Go launched in 2016, the abundance of Pidgey turned it into a running joke online. Memes spread of neighborhoods filled with nothing but the tiny brown bird. Yet beneath the humor was affection. People laughed at catching dozens of Pidgey, but they also smiled because once again, just like in 1996, Pidgey was the first companion waiting for them. Cultural nostalgia is built from repetition, from moments that everyone shares. The Pidgey line provided exactly that. It was the first capture, the first battle partner, the first card pulled, the first flock seen soaring across the anime sky. These repeated experiences turned the bird into more than a Pokémon. It became a memory, woven into childhoods across the world. Even today, when fans think back to where their love of Pokémon began, many picture the same thing: a simple Pidgey rising out of the grass, wings fluttering gently, waiting to be caught. Chapter 46. A Gentle Closing. As our journey with Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot comes to an end, it is worth pausing to reflect on the path they have carried us through. From the very first steps out of Pallet Town to the grand skies of competitive play and glittering trading cards, this bird family has been a constant presence. Quiet, steady, and familiar, they remind us that some of the most meaningful companions are not the rarest or the strongest, but the ones who are always by our side. We began with Pidgey, small and cautious, fluttering out of the tall grass. For so many trainers, it was the very first Pokémon ever caught, a gentle introduction to the vast world ahead. Its role was never to overwhelm, but to teach. Gust and Sand Attack carried lessons in patience, in persistence, in the idea that even small wings can make a difference. Pidgeotto came next, bold and reliable. In Ash's story, it was one of his earliest captures, a partner who fought with determination and evolved at the perfect moment to protect a flock in danger. Its sharp eyes and strong wings represented growth, the transition from early steps to confident strides. Many players and viewers alike saw themselves mirrored in Pidgeotto's journey, no longer a beginner, but not yet at the peak. Pidgeot brought the line to its full majesty. With flowing crest feathers and wings said to outrun sound, it became a symbol of freedom and flight. In the anime, it was a guardian. In the games, it was the promise of evolution fulfilled. And in the trading card game, it was captured in shimmering foil, a treasure to hold and admire. Mega Evolution even gave it a moment of unmatched brilliance, reminding everyone that hidden strength can emerge from the most familiar beginnings. Along the way, we saw them in movies, in cameos, in spin-off adventures like Pokémon Snap and Mystery Dungeon. We watched them appear in cards across generations, from the base set to Scarlet and Violet. We remembered schoolyard trades, afternoons battling with friends, and the thrill of spotting flocks soaring in the background of anime skies. Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot were not only part of the Pokémon world, they became part of our own memories. And now, as we bring this reflection to a close, imagine once more a flock of Pidgey settling into the branches at sunset. The air is calm, the colors warm. Among them, a single Pidgeot circles high above, its cry echoing softly before it drifts back to the forest, wings folding gently as it lands. The day is ending, the skies are quiet, and the world feels whole. May their story remind you that every journey begins with small steps, and that even the humblest companions can carry us farther than we ever dreamed. Rest now, with the gentle beat of wings guiding you toward peace.